Chapter 2681. Lord Ruler, it's my fault. The Divine King responded to the ruler of all heaven's rebuke and immediately used a secret technique unique to the Asura race to increase his strength. The Asura God King raised his physical strength to the peak he could reach and began to use the short sword divine artifact in his hand to attack the 3 heaven cloud arrows. He knew that if he couldn't deal with these arrows, it would be impossible to deal with Night Sorrow. Ruler of all heaven, Thousand Shadow is preparing to use his ultimate technique. I hope you will fulfill your promise of a reward. On the other side, the Divine King transmitted to all heaven. His body gradually solidified as he used a secret technique to increase his strength to deal with Night Sorrow's 3 sky cloud arrows. As the ruler of all heaven, I naturally wouldn't lie. If it weren't for the urgency of the situation, you wouldn't have been given this task, the ruler of all heaven replied disdainfully. For this matter, him bringing the Thousand Shadows God King here could be considered a coincidence. I, Thousand Shadow, was the one who measured the stature of a gentleman with my own yardstick. I hope the ruler of all heaven won't take offense. The Divine King replied and then entered a state of desperation. While the Divine King and Thousand Shadow Divine King were using their full strength to deal with the sky cloud arrows, Thousand Shadow recovered a pill. Night Sorrow swallowed a pill to recover his vitality. After recovering, he knocked an arrow on his bow again and shot an arrow at Thousand Shadows God King. Without the help of Shao Tianxian, who was an artifact spirit, every arrow he fired consumed an enormous amount of energy. The average person wouldn't be able to bear it. Bzzz. When the arrow was shot, a buzzing sound was heard in the void. The sky cloud arrow shot toward the Thousand Shadows Godmonarch's Dantian with an earth-shaking momentum. It easily broke through the defenses of his divine domain. Damn it! What kind of god is this? He can continuously fire arrows with the aura of a ruler. If I had known he would be so difficult to deal with, I wouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. Originally, the Divine King of Thousand Shadows was already in a terrible fix. Because the heavenly cloud arrow was so powerful, he had to go all out just to completely suppress it. Now that another arrow was coming, and it was even more powerful than the previous 3 arrows, he immediately became flustered. I'll kill you while you're sick. The Thousand Shadows Divine King's art of the Thousand Shadows Divine King was completely useless against Night Sorrow. It could be said that it was severely countered. Relatively speaking, he was less of a threat than the Divine King of Asura. Seeing that the Divine King of Thousand Shadows was flustered, Night Sorrow used the heavenly Samsara halberd and unleashed the forbidden reincarnation spear. Just as the Divine King of the Thousand Shadows was preparing to dodge, Night Sorrow instantly used the virtuous dragon-locking formation, temporarily trapping it within. Then, all the attacks, including the arrows, bombarded the sealed space. In the face of the 4 heavenly cloud arrows and the heavenly Samsara halberd, even the Divine King of Thousand Shadows found it difficult to endure. After being struck, he screamed miserably. Trash! Thousand Shadows, are you really this kind of Divine King? The all-heaven ruler coldly snorted as he watched the Divine King of Thousand Shadows being beaten up miserably by Night Sorrow. All-heaven ruler, this god's methods are extremely strange. I, Thousand Shadows, am unable to deal with him. Farewell. The extremely miserable Thousand Shadows God King replied unhappily after being reprimanded. Then, he used a secret technique to flee into the distance. Could it be that this Divine King of Thousand Shadows isn't one of the all-heaven ruler's men? Seeing the Divine King of Thousand Shadows flee, Night Sorrow didn't give chase. Instead, he locked his gaze on the Divine King of Asura. At this moment, the Divine King of Asura had completely suppressed the 3 heavenly cloud arrows. Although the heavenly cloud arrows had been strengthened by the Sovereign Stone, they weren't truly at the sovereign level. After being suppressed, they gradually lost their luster and terrifying offensive power. Your arrows aren't that great after all. Now that they aren't much of a threat to me, let's see what other tricks you have. After finding a way to deal with the heavenly cloud arrows, the Divine King of Asura laughed sinisterly and sent an Asura palm at Night Sorrow. It seems like I can use my strength to resist this palm. Facing the true divine king of Azura's attack, Night Sorrow pondered for a moment and decided not to use the Tianyun Bao. Instead, he condensed his divine Yuan energy and sent out a heaven-cleaving earth-splitting palm. Ha ha ha. Reckless ant. If you don't use the sovereign artifact, you're nothing. Seeing that Night Sorrow didn't use the Tianyun Bao and sent out a palm to meet his attack head-on, the divine king of Azura laughed sinisterly. Although I'm nothing, you're definitely the weakest among the divine king. If you don't use the sovereign artifact, you're nothing. Don't be so smug, take this properly. It was rare that the divine king of Azura didn't use the half-step sovereign artifact in his hand. Night Sorrow confidently chose to meet his attack head-on. Since ancient times, no divine lord has ever killed the divine king of the divine world. You, a high god, want to stir up waves in front of me? How naive. Facing Night Sorrow, the divine king of Azura was extremely confident. His palm smashed down heavily at Night Sorrow's position. Just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean I can't do it. Night Sorrow sent out a heaven-cleaving earth-splitting palm to meet the attack. Husband, be careful. After all, the other party is the divine king. Sikong Chuyu, who knew that she shouldn't speak to affect Night Sorrow, shouted worriedly from the clear sky pagoda. Yang Lei, Lin Piaomiao, and the others beside her were also frowning. As for Jing Yun, who had just married into the family, she was even more worried. After all, a high god fighting the divine king sounded like a fantasy story. However, Night Sorrow was doing it for real. What a joke. Die. The divine king of Azura, who was in the void, felt that the high god before him was simply courting death when he met Night Sorrow's palm. He had a sovereign artifact, but he didn't make good use of it. Instead, he chose to meet the attack head-on. This was simply throwing an egg at a rock. Boom. However, after the two of them met, something happened that surprised the divine king of Azura. Night Sorrow, a mere high god, hadn't been killed immediately. He hadn't even suffered a single loss. On the contrary, he had been forced back hundreds of miles. How is this possible? Is he really a high god? As a divine king of Azura, he had actually suffered a loss in the process of meeting a high god. The divine king of Azura couldn't accept this at all. Scum, back down. I, the divine king of Azura, will personally take action. Seeing that the divine king of Azura couldn't do anything to Night Sorrow in a direct confrontation, the divine king of Azura, who was hiding in the void, couldn't take it anymore and slowly revealed himself. He was only a little more than 3 feet tall and looked like a child. However, his face was a little ugly. After revealing himself, the divine king of Azura looked coldly at Night Sorrow. Ant, hand over the sovereign artifact in your hands. Otherwise, no one in this world can save you. If you want my sovereign artifact, come and get it yourself. The divine king of Azura didn't use his divine domain to suppress him. Night Sorrow replied. Even in the face of a divine king, he didn't want to take a step back. Do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you can fight the divine king? I can kill you with a single finger. Chapter 2682. There was no question that the divine king was acting shamelessly against a god. All heaven was a god, yet he had actually attacked Night Sorrow. That was utterly shameless. Although Night Sorrow was strong enough to fight against the divine king, he had no way of resisting a god's attack. In fact, after all heaven released his divine domain, Night Sorrow couldn't even move. Even so, he didn't panic in the slightest. Shao Tianxian transmitted, "Don't be afraid. Given all heaven's strength, he won't be able to act arrogantly." I understand, Sect Master. Shao Tianxian, who had disappeared for some time, reappeared and returned to Tianyun Bao's side to help Night Sorrow resist all heaven's divine domain. This made Night Sorrow feel much more relaxed. As soon as he finished speaking, a blurry figure with a blurry face appeared in the void and blasted a punch at Luo Tian. Who goes there? How dare you ambush my All-Heaven? The All-Heaven God, who had been pointing a finger at Night Sorrow to kill him, suddenly realized that someone was attacking him. He immediately retracted his attack and met the fist in the void. "I don't need to ambush you, all heaven." The figure in the void punched out, attracting the attention of everyone in the world. You're Heartwarming. Luo Tian, who had thrown out a punch in preparation to fight back, quickly recognized the newcomer and cried out in alarm. Although all heaven was a god, he wasn't a match for the strongest person in the god realm, Heartwarming. With a bang, he was sent flying. His entire fist was shattered, making him look extremely miserable. "Since you're still useful to the god realm, scram. If you try to steal anything from Night Sorrow again, I will uproot your all-heaven god manor." Heartwarming, who defeated all heaven with a single punch, coldly berated him. "From today onwards, if a ruler attacks Night Sorrow, I will immediately take action." After saying this, he looked at Night Sorrow and said, "Night Sorrow, I'm already aware of your decision to withdraw from the Tianyun school. I'll give you a piece of land, and I hope that you can establish your own divine territory." "Night Sorrow, you don't have to be so courteous. Tianai is not an outsider." Noticing that Night Sorrow didn't respond, Xiao Tianxian in Tianyun Bao immediately transmitted his voice. "Thank you, Heartwarming." Upon hearing this, Night Sorrow immediately thanked him. After leaving the Tianyun school, he really didn't know where to go. If he could get a piece of land and manage it well, then the entire Night Moon Empire would have a place in the realm of the gods. "You're welcome. You and I both came from the lower realm, and we both joined Tianyun school, and we both left. This is also a type of fate." Heartwarming chuckled. "If you weren't so outstanding, I would have taken you under my wing." Heartwarming, you flatter me. Night Sorrow cupped his hands. "I'm not flattering you. I can't praise you too much. I believe that one day, you'll be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with me, and perhaps even go further." Heartwarming said casually, then turned to the sky and said domineeringly, "From today onwards, anyone who dares to plot against the Tianyun Bao will become my mortal enemy." A few of the figures hiding in the sky immediately chose to flee after hearing Heartwarming's words. They knew that there was no point in hiding in front of the most powerful person in the realm of the gods. "Many thanks for your care, Heartwarming." Heartwarming didn't even glance at the Tianyun Bao. Instead, he issued a warning to the others. Night Sorrow was extremely grateful for this. "You're welcome. Now that this matter has come to an end, let's find a place to have a few drinks." Heartwarming looked at Night Sorrow. "All right, Heartwarming." Night Sorrow nodded. He understood that Heartwarming wanted to catch up with Xiao Tianxian. He had his wives prepare a banquet in a bamboo forest at the foot of Tianyun School. "In the future, there's no need to call me Heartwarming." After taking a seat, Heartwarming said casually. Clearly, he didn't treat Yishan as a junior. "All right." Night Sorrow replied politely, but at the same time, he felt a bit awkward. After all, he couldn't possibly call him Heartwarming, could he? Calling him Heartwarming would seem a bit distant. Night Sorrow, there's no need to be so polite. We're all on the same side." At this moment, Xiao Tianxian emerged from the Tianyun Bao once more. After saying a few words, he sat down and began to chat with Tianai. The two of them chatted for a long time, but what puzzled Night Sorrow was that Xiao Tianxian hadn't mentioned anything about the eternal sovereign world. Thus, he sent a message to Xiao Tianxian. "Sect Master, why didn't you mention the eternal sovereign world to Heartwarming?" "Because telling him would only cause him more trouble. It's better not to." Xiao Tianxian sighed. "The only person who can save the god realm is you, Night Sorrow." "Night Sorrow understands." Night Sorrow replied, feeling as if a heavy burden had been placed on his shoulders. Even Heartwarming couldn't do anything about it. Now, he had to deal with it himself. Most people wouldn't be able to shoulder this burden. "Night Sorrow." My artifact spirit body is about to disappear. If you need anything in the future, feel free to ask Tianai. After sending Night Sorrow a message, Xiao Tianxian spoke up. Right. Night Sorrow, there's no need for you to stand on ceremony with me. Upon hearing Xiao Tianxuan's words, Hegemon Tianai smiled and nodded. Haha, having the number one person in the God realm as my backer is a wonderful feeling. Night Sorrow chuckled. In truth, given his personality, he wasn't the type to ask for reinforcements for no reason. He suddenly recalled the matter of Jin Ye's cannon and began to explain it to Hegemon Tianai. Hegemon Tianai said, any clan that grows stronger will encounter all sorts of problems. Generally speaking, when clansmen fight with others, as long as they aren't suppressed by someone much stronger than them, I won't interfere. This is a rule of the Zhenyi clan. The matter between you and Jin Yedian is the karma between you two. Night Sorrow understands. Hegemon Tianai's words meant that he didn't take this matter to heart. Night Sorrow raised his cup. This cup of wine is to thank Hegemon Tianai for bestowing this land upon me. Ha ha ha. My piece of land is relatively barren. Furthermore, the sect leader asked for it for you. If you want to thank someone, thank the sect master. Hegemon Tianai chuckled, then continued, Night Sorrow. Although I've bestowed this land upon you, I won't guard it for you forever. Do you understand what this means? Please speak frankly, Hegemon Tianai. After expressing his thanks to Xiao Tianxian, Night Sorrow looked towards Hegemon Tianai. Chapter 2683. So that's how it is. Although Hegemon Tianai didn't go into too much detail, Night Sorrow already had a general idea. Not a single piece of land in the God realm was absolutely safe. Now that he'd received the land bestowed upon him by Hegemon Tianai, he'd definitely be attacked by others. He might even have to fight for years on end. You don't need to worry too much. No matter what happens, just go ahead and do it. If others go too far, I won't just sit by and watch. Hegemon Tianai drank several cups of wine, then said, these wines of yours really do have a unique flavor. They remind me of the lower realms. These wines were brewed by my wife using the techniques of the lower realms. If you like them, you can take some with you when you leave, Night Sorrow said, then send a message to Aoi, telling her to prepare some good wine for him. All right. If that's the case, I won't refuse. Hegemon Tianai nodded, then looked at Xiao Tianxian. Sect Master, tell me about yourself. There's nothing to tell you about me. The future of the God realm belongs to you. Xiao Tianxian smiled, but didn't mention the eternal sovereign world. Instead, he changed the topic. Night Sorrow, what are you planning to name your territory? My title is Undying, and I cultivate the Undying mantra. Let's call it Undying Domain. Night Sorrow didn't hesitate at all. He immediately said the name he had in mind. Titled Undying? Good, very good. Undying Domain isn't a bad name either. I trust that in the near future, this name will resound throughout the entire God realm, Hegemon Tianai praised. Xiao Tianxian chuckled. If you want to make a name for yourself, you have to be a bit more ruthless. That way, others won't dare to act against you. Night Sorrow will do his best. Night Sorrow replied, then began to ask the two of them about cultivation. With two hegemons guiding him, Night Sorrow felt like his understanding of the Divine Lord Realm had improved. He was already not too far away from breaking through to the Divine Lord Realm. Night Sorrow, don't be in such a hurry to break through. If you stay in the Great God level for too short a time, it could be detrimental to your future cultivation. Knowing that Night Sorrow had just become a high god and would soon become a half-step Divine Lord, Xiao Tianxian reminded him. Don't worry, sect leader. Night Sorrow knows what to do. When it came to cultivation, Night Sorrow felt that every time he advanced, he would naturally succeed. Furthermore, his foundation was deep, so he wasn't afraid of cultivating too quickly. As the banquet drew to a close, Hegemon Tianai said, Night Sorrow, I have a suggestion. Do you want to hear it? Hegemontia's teachings? Knight Sorrow naturally wants to listen. Knight Sorrow immediately replied. Although divine artifacts are important, they are still external objects. I have a hegemon artifact as well, but I don't normally need to carry it on me, Hegemontian said slowly. Knight Sorrow understands what Hegemontian means. In the future, unless it's a matter of life and death, Knight Sorrow won't use Tianyun Bao again. Knight Sorrow immediately understood Hegemontian's intentions. He wanted him to rely less on external forces. It's good that you understand. In addition, there's one more thing. Once you break through to the Divine Lord level, you can participate in the Divine Lord challenge I'm holding. If your results are outstanding, you can enter my divine artifact, the Skysplit Tower, and gain many benefits. Hegemontian continued, as for territory, once you break through to the Divine Lord level, you can ask me for it. That'll give you some motivation. All right. Knight Sorrow understands. Knight Sorrow nodded. Once he broke through to the Divine Lord level, many divine kings would no longer be a threat. He understood Hegemontian's intentions. At this moment, Knight Sorrow suddenly thought of the Skysplit Bone Pagoda in the Endless Bone region. Puzzled, he asked, Hegemontian, do you know the name of the Skysplit Bone Pagoda? The names of the Skysplit Bone Pagoda and the Skysplit Bone Pagoda were simply too similar. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. The Skysplit Bone Pagoda. I once had a disciple who seemed to have refined it. However, I don't know the specifics. Hegemontian paused for a moment, then began to explain the Tao to Knight Sorrow. Fine. Knight Sorrow understands. Knight Sorrow assented, then began to ask Hegemontian about the Skysplit Bone Pagoda. After learning that it had 99 levels and comparing it to the 9 levels of the Skysplit Bone Pagoda, he felt that there wasn't much of a connection between the two. After the banquet concluded, Knight Sorrow sent Hegemontian away, then began to chat with Xiao Tianxian. Xiao Tianxian gave Knight Sorrow some final instructions, then his artifact spirit body completely disappeared from the world. Knight Sorrow knew very well that this was only a temporary parting. Once they reached the eternal sovereign world, they would naturally meet again. There was nothing to be sad about. Husband, where should I go next? After leaving the Tianyun school, Sikong Chuyu asked. Hegemontian had promised to give him territory, but Knight Sorrow would have to become a divine lord before he could fulfill his promise. From the looks of it, Knight Sorrow and the entire Night Moon Empire had once more become homeless. Let's first go to Seaside City to find Senior Tianqing. We'll rescue Auntie Fei together with her, then we'll come up with other plans. Knight Sorrow said a few words to Sikong Chuyu, then flew towards Seaside City. Heh. Captain. In the future, when we have territory, we'll have things to do. Xian Jizi, who hadn't spoken for a long time, transmitted his voice to Knight Sorrow. With territory, the god-slaying team of the Divine World will officially begin their expedition. Knight Sorrow said to Xian Jizi and the others, then continued, but for now, everyone's strength is a little weak. While I'm in the process of breaking through to the Divine Lord level, I hope everyone can quickly improve their strength in the Clear Sky Pagoda. Currently, there was a huge king-grade divine vein in the Clear Sky Pagoda, which made cultivation twice the result with half the effort. He hoped that a few divine lords would emerge from the crowd as soon as possible. Only then would they have the strength to lead the team into battle. Captain, don't worry. Seeing that you're already able to fight against the Divine King, we're all anxious in our hearts. Everyone is working harder to cultivate. Xian Jizi said with a smile. Whoever breaks through to the Divine Lord level first will be appointed as the City Lord. Knight Sorrow said with a smile, then hurried on his way. As he hurried on, he pondered about how to strengthen the immortal divine realm. In the future, he would likely leave. Before that, he wanted to establish a territory for his people that no one would dare to invade. Only then would he be able to head to the eternal supreme realm with peace of mind. Husband, there seems to be a battle ahead. Night Sorrow kept thinking about this while flying. When he approached Seaside City, he discovered that there was a great battle outside the city, so Jingyun reminded him. What's going on? Night Sorrow, who came back to his senses, looked over and discovered that Seaside City was completely surrounded by dark creatures. There were dark masses of evil creatures in all directions. With Senior Tianqing's strength, she wouldn't just stand by and watch these evil creatures wreak havoc. What's going on? Chapter 2684. After opening the sea serpent's eye to observe the dark evil creatures outside High Bay City, Night Sorrow discovered that there were 4 different clans in the north, south, east, and west. Each of them was led by an invincible Sir God. There were at least 20 Sir Gods and countless High Gods and Feather Gods under their command. The dark creatures around High Bay City shouldn't be so powerful, Night Sorrow said as he analyzed the 4 different clans in front of him. They were the Dark Murlocs, the soul-devouring beasts, the Dark Demons, and the Vampire Bats. When he had entered the Endless Bone region and Jinyuan Sir God's cave abode, the chief-level evil creatures he encountered were either sealed or crippled invincible Sir Gods. There weren't even many ordinary Sir Gods. Now that there was such a dark mass, he couldn't understand it. I don't care. Let's enter the city and take a look. The besieged High Bay City's gates were tightly shut. If it weren't for the formation around it, the city would have been breached. Now, the surrounding areas were completely surrounded by the evil creatures. There were only a few Feather God Realm practitioners scattered on the city walls of High Bay City. Their faces were all filled with fear. Obviously, the critical situation in High Bay City made everyone tremble in fear. Night Sorrow, who was about to enter the city, took out the Samsara halberd and blasted the Inferno demon toward the vampire bat camp closest to him. The Samsara halberd, which had been upgraded to a king-level divine artifact, blasted the Inferno demon. The flames were like a burning sun. All the dark creatures that were touched by the flames were completely burned to ashes. They turned into streaks of power of merit and surged into Night Sorrow's body. An enemy sneak attack. Prepare to attack. The leader of the vampire bat camp, an invincible Sir God vampire bat, roared when it was blasted by the Inferno demon that had been shot from the sky. Night Sorrow's attack just now had caused the vampire bat camp to lose 2 Sir Gods. This made it furious. When the bloodthirsty bats noticed Yi Shang's figure, they immediately charged at him ferociously. They seemed to blot out the sky and cover the earth, like waves after waves of turbulent ocean waves. Most people would feel fear when faced with so many vampire bats. Night Sorrow, on the other hand, was brimming with battle intent. To him, the more dark creatures there were, the better. Facing so many vampire bats, Night Sorrow didn't wait for them to get close. He immediately used the Green Rock soul-rending roar. Now that he was a half-step divine lord, he no longer needed to use the battle's secret art of the Treastrimsa heavens to increase his strength. He could use the Azure Rock soul-rending roar. After 3 roars, the vast majority of High God and Feather God level blood-sucking bats were shattered into bits of virtue that surged into his body. Not good. Retreat. He's not someone you can make an enemy of. Seeing the countless vampire bats under his command being killed by Night Sorrow's 3 roars, the leader of the vampire bats, Batfly, immediately commanded the rest of the vampire bats to flee. It then led a dozen or so monarch-level vampire bats forward. Human cultivator, I will suck your blood dry and turn you into a dried husk. Then I will float you outside the city gates. When Batfly was still 1,000 miles away from Night Sorrow, it bared its blood-stained fangs. When it spoke, there was a thick stench of blood around it. It was clear that it had sucked the blood of many cultivators. Beast! Where did you come from? Night Sorrow didn't panic in the slightest in front of these vampire bats. He had even fought the Divine King and had the ability to fight against many of them. I come from a place that makes your heart tremble. The leader of the vampire bats, Batfly, didn't answer Yi Shan's question directly. He roared and ordered, suck his blood dry. After it gave the order, the many monarch-level vampire bats that were the size of a small mountain began to surround Night Sorrow. Their bloody mouths were like the entrances to a cave, deep and terrifying. "You want to suck my blood dry? I'm afraid you don't have the ability." At the city gates, there were many high god and feather god level vampire bats. Night Sorrow glanced at the vampire bat army and ignored them for the time being. He held the Samsara halberd in his hand and fought with the monarch-level vampire bats in front of him. At the same time that Night Sorrow attacked, the leader of the vampire bats, Batfly, took out a strangely shaped divine artifact that looked a bit like a water chestnut from his spatial artifact. He tossed it into the air, and it shot out rings of light. Night Sorrow immediately felt a splitting headache when he was enveloped by these light waves. It was very uncomfortable and a sense of violence rose in his heart. What kind of technique is this? Night Sorrow had been cultivating the power of merit all this time. His temperament had never been so violent. He was shocked. He released the power of merit and wrapped it around himself. The influence of these light waves was immediately reduced by a lot. After his mind and body became clear, Night Sorrow continued to fight with the vampire bat army. The power of merit? This is our great enemy. Summon the masters of the other clans. We must take him down today. Batfly, the vampire bat leader, noticed the golden power of merit flowing on the surface of Night Sorrow's body and immediately shouted. After he gave the order, a few high god-level vampire bats immediately rushed to the other clans to call for reinforcements. The dark and evil creatures had the advantage. Although there was a big commotion here, the other clans would not send people over unless they were summoned. When the vampire bats went to call for reinforcements, some cultivators guarding the city walls of High Base City also noticed the battle in front of them. However, their strength was limited. They could not see clearly what was going on and immediately reported it to their superiors. "You must take me down. How arrogant of you." Facing the vampire bat leader Batfly and other opponents, Night Sorrow responded disdainfully. Then, he used the Samsara halberd to attack with the forbidden Samsara spear. This attack was aimed at the vampire bat leader Batfly. As the spear pierced through the void, Night Sorrow used the hand of heaven and earth splitting. The hand of heaven and earth splitting Night Sorrow did not target a specific target. Instead, it directly shook the void and attacked all the other high god-level vampire bats. After being shaken by Night Sorrow's hand of heaven and earth splitting, the surrounding sky suddenly became wrinkled. Some parts of the void were completely shattered. A few high god-level vampire bats could not dodge in time and were shaken by this attack. Their flesh and blood splattered everywhere. It was very miserable. Batfly, the vampire bat leader facing the forbidden Samsara spear, was shocked. He did not expect that Night Sorrow, who was only a high god, could release the full power of a king-level divine weapon. Batfly did not have the courage to fight against the attack of the king-level divine weapon Samsara halberd. He chose to dodge immediately. "Where do you think you are going? Turn into the power of merit." Seeing that the vampire bat leader Batfly wanted to escape, Night Sorrow, who had activated the sea serpent's eye, immediately chased after him. "Damn it! What are you looking at? Stop him for me. If you can't, self-destruct." Chapter 2685. The other vampire bats that had been stunned by Night Sorrow's move turned even redder in an instant. They seemed to have gone completely crazy as they attacked Night Sorrow recklessly, choosing to self-destruct one after another. Self-destruct? What's the use? It's just turning into power of merit. Night Sorrow, who had used the eye of the sea serpent to dodge the attacks, gave up on chasing the leader of the vampire bats, and prepared to deal with the trouble in front of him first. These crazily self-destructing vampire monarch-level bats were indeed a little troublesome. However, with Night Sorrow's evasion and the help of the Merit Dragon locking array, these troubles did not cause much damage and were completely absorbed one by one. Human cultivator. Don't be too complacent. When the other races arrive, it will be the time of your death. Batfly, the leader of the vampire bats, who had fled into the distance, saw that all the monarch gods under his command had been killed and the army he led was almost completely disintegrated. He roared unhappily. "I'm afraid you won't be able to see my death." The forbidden reincarnation spear did not hit Batfly in the end. Instead, it hit the void. Seeing that the other party was still jumping, Night Sorrow immediately used the dark sky wandering dragon technique that Xiao Tianxian had taught him. This was a movement technique that he had cultivated on the way here. When he used it, he was like a dragon swimming in the void, traveling millions of miles in an instant. In an instant, he caught up with Batfly, the leader of the vampire bats. How can he be so fast? Even teleportation was not as fast as Night Sorrow's current speed. Batfly, the leader of the vampire bats, was shocked. He took out a mountainous seal from his spatial device and threw it at Night Sorrow's head. This king-level mountainous seal emitted a dark yellow light. After it enveloped Night Sorrow, he immediately felt that it was difficult to move, and his speed decreased by millions of times. "You want to catch up with me? You have no chance at all. When the other leaders arrive, I, Batfly, will personally suck your blood dry. Your blood is full of power of merit, so it should be very delicious." Batfly, the leader of the vampire bats, laughed maniacally when he saw that Night Sorrow's movements had been greatly affected. At this time, the Divine Lord powerhouses of the other three races were already rushing over. The howling sounds of breaking air proved that they weren't too far away. The more the merrier. Night Sorrow, whose speed had been greatly reduced due to the King Grade's secret treasures restriction, simply stood where he was and did not chase after the vampire bat leader. He knew that when the reinforcements arrived, the other party would definitely rush over again. Inferno Demon subduing. Glancing at the army of vampire bats outside the city gates, Night Sorrow once again used the heavenly Samsara halberd to unleash the Inferno Demon slaying technique. Hundreds of millions of high celestial and feather god-level blood-sucking bats were incinerated by the Inferno Demon subduing flames. No. Damn you. The hundreds of millions of soldiers under his command were slaughtered in an instant. The leader of the vampire bats, Batfly, let out a sharp cry. He lost control and unleashed a sonic attack at Night Sorrow. This was his race's innate talent. Night Sorrow, who was hit by this sonic attack, felt a little dazed. He felt as if he had walked into a blurry illusion. It was a magnificent palace. Within the palace, there were thousands of naked beauties. Not only were these women outstanding, but their graceful figures also made one's heart race. Husband. It's good to be here soon. Little Dao. One of the women had just opened her mouth when Night Sorrow snorted coldly and shattered the illusion in front of him. This move by the leader of the vampire bats, Batfly, was completely fatal to other high celestial cultivators. Even to most divine lords, it had a great effect of confusing them. However, Night Sorrow's heart was as still as a rock. How could he be confused by such a move? Since you're not running away, then die. Although Night Sorrow was affected by the Great Seal of the Mountains, it was not easy for him to catch up to the leader of the vampire bats. However, he threw the heavenly Samsara halberd at him. The heavenly Samsara halberd, which had already become a king-grade divine artifact and had been strengthened by the ruler's stone, was thrown with a grand aura. The leader of the vampire bats, Batfly, immediately felt an overwhelming righteous aura. Master! Master, save me! Batfly, who felt great danger, was clearly a little weak because he had just used his race's innate talent. In terms of speed, he was not as fast as the heavenly Samsara halberd. Seeing that he was about to be caught, he immediately screamed. Master? To be recognized as a master by an invincible divine lord, he must be at least the divine king. That's right, if the enemy didn't have the divine king in their camp, they wouldn't have made such a big move. Night Sorrow heard the leader of the vampire bats, Batfly, and immediately understood some things. At the same time, the experts of the other three races, the soul-devouring beasts, the dark murlocs, and the dark demons, were very close. However, just as they were about to arrive, the heavenly Samsara halberd had already killed the weakened Batfly. Dark Demon. Soul-devouring beast leader. Wasn't one of you sealed and the other split into countless parts? Seeing the experts of the dark creatures rushing over, Night Sorrow asked in surprise. The leader of the vampire bats, Bat Fly, was killed by the heavenly Samsara halberd. The Great Seal of Mountains lost control and fell into Night Sorrow's hands, completely losing its effect. Night Sorrow, who had asked this question, discovered that the Great Seal of Mountains had the aura of a human cultivator. He couldn't help but suspect the identity of Batfly's master. He secretly guessed that the other party might be a cultivator from the divine realm. It's you. Little brat, I, the Dark Demon, will tear you apart today. The leader of the Dark Demons was the Dark Demon statue that Night Sorrow had strengthened and sealed. When he discovered that it was Night Sorrow in front of him, endless dark aura immediately overflowed from his body. Dark Demon, it's really you. Who was it that let you out? Where is the sky-reaching bone pagoda now? After confirming that the Dark Demon in front of him was the evil statue in the dark abyss, Night Sorrow continued to ask, wanting to obtain some useful information. Although you are about to be killed by us, I, the Dark Demon, will not reveal any information to you. Go to hell. The Dark Demon replied with an evil voice and continued, the two of you, this human in front of us has the power of merit protecting him. We will immediately help Master kill him and help Master obtain everything he has. All right. I also have a grudge against him. The soul-devouring beast leader, who had regained the cultivation of an invincible divine monarch, looked at Night Sorrow with hatred in his eyes. Since you are not saying anything, then there is no point in continuing to exist. Turn everything into power of merit for me. Facing 3 invincible divine monarch-level dark evil creatures, Night Sorrow was not afraid at all. Instead, he was very excited. His cultivation had already risen to the level of a half-step divine monarch through the rainbow profound spirit pill. However, his power of merit was still a little lacking. Chapter 2686. The only question was whether he could use the power of merit to reach the great circle of the half-step divine Lord realm. If he could, Night Sorrow would be able to use the power of merit to reach the divine Lord realm. From there, he could use the power of merit to drive other aspects and completely advance to become a divine lord. If he could successfully ascend to the divine sovereign realm, he'd be able to head to Sovereign Tian Ye's territory and participate in the divine sovereign challenge. He'd also be able to obtain the first piece of territory in the immortal divine realm from Sovereign Tian Yi. With this piece of land, the Night Moon Empire would be able to establish itself in the divine world. You want to turn us into power of merit? You are just an exalted god and you can't do it. The Dark Demon clearly looked down on Yishang. His impression of Yishang was still the same as before. Although Night Sorrow had made great progress in his cultivation, the Dark Demon still looked down on him. That's what the vampire bat thought too. Now it has turned into power of merit. A cold smile appeared on Yishang's face. At the same time, he called back the Samsara halberd. Do you think it's a good thing to kill the bat? Let me tell you, you are in big trouble this time. But it doesn't matter because you will die in our hands. The Dark Demon said coldly, let's attack together. We'll capture him alive and bring him to Master. All right. I will destroy his cultivation first. The Dark Murloc leader, who was holding a thick battle sword, bared its fangs in response. It was the first to stab at Sorrow. The slash looked simple, but it tore through the void and pressed down on Night Sorrow's head. It felt as though 10,000 mountains were pressing down on him. Invincible Sir God, you are indeed capable. But to me, it's just a small trick. Night Sorrow, who was holding the Samsara halberd, raised his hand and struck with the forbidden spear. Boom! There was an explosion and the leader of the Dark Murloc saber was shattered. What? How can this be? The Dark Murloc leader's battle blade was already infinitely close to a king-level artifact, but it was actually shattered by Night Sorrow's attack. This made it very flabbergasted. At the same time, the dark demon and the soul-devouring beast leader immediately gained a new understanding of Night Sorrow's strength and became serious. Dark Fiend snorted coldly and said, "I didn't expect that in just a short few years of not seeing, your strength rose to such a level. And he even has a king-grade divine artifact. So what if you have a king-grade divine artifact? What will shock you is yet to come." Night Sorrow thought to himself, "I still have a Dominator-grade god artifact, but I don't need it to deal with you guys." As he spoke, Night Sorrow immediately used the virtuous dragon-locking formation to imprison the dark demon. At the same time, he used the taboo reincarnation spear. Although he hadn't activated the 33 Heavens secret combat technique, with Night Sorrow's strength, such a move was enough to bring about a life and death crisis to the dark demons. What kind of move is this? Before the dark demon, who was trapped in the sealed space, could react, he was struck by the forbidden reincarnation spear. He was almost blasted to pieces. After disintegrating, it took a long time for him to reform. However, his strength was greatly reduced. I'm afraid that the virtuous merit god in front of us is not someone we can deal with. Everyone, attack him together and inform Master. The dark demon, who had almost been killed by Night Sorrow in one move, said with lingering fear. As soon as the dark demon finished speaking, the 30 to 40 Sir Gods who had come together immediately attacked Night Sorrow. Although Night Sorrow's strength was astonishing and could almost kill one or even a few Sir Gods in one move, it was obviously impossible for him to take the attacks of so many Sir Gods head-on. The situation immediately turned into a situation where Night Sorrow was retreating and fighting at the same time. Night Sorrow, who had the eye of the sea serpent and had learned the mysterious sky-wandering dragon art, was not at a disadvantage in the battle. Night Sorrow. It's Night Sorrow. At this moment, Yuntiani, who had suddenly appeared in the defensive array of High Bay City, shouted loudly. To be able to fight so many Sir Gods with just the strength of a high god, Night Sorrow is indeed a rare talent. Ao Qingyun, who was standing at the front of the group, immediately praised Night Sorrow after seeing him persevere under the attacks of so many evil creatures. Hearing Ao Qingyun's unhurried praise, Yuntiani shouted, "Alliance Lord, what's the use of saying such things under such circumstances? Send people to help." "No, the Dark Race army is pressing down on us. It wasn't easy for our high base city to activate the array from back then. If we take the risk of activating it, it might cause great suffering," Ao Qingyun replied with a gloomy expression. Night Sorrow clearly has the strength to fight. Under such circumstances, if we send out some experts, won't we have a chance of victory? Yuntiani's expression changed drastically after hearing Ao Qingyun's refusal. He hadn't expected such a response. "You don't understand. The Divine King is behind these dark race creatures. If we take the risk of activating the array, our high base city will be destroyed with a flip of the hand. I, Ao Qingyun, am not afraid of death, but I can't take responsibility for everyone here." Ao Qingyun, who had already become the city lord of High Base City, said with a sigh. "Then think of a way to let me out. I, Yuntiani, can't bear to see my friend fight alone." Yuntiani roared in displeasure. Yuntiani could understand why Ao Qingyun would give up on Night Sorrow and protect everyone in High Base City, but he didn't want to see Night Sorrow fight alone. "Tiani, I can't fulfill your request." Ao Qingyun's expression was extremely gloomy. "Don't tell me your so-called protection of High Base City is to activate the array and struggle at death's door? Now that Night Sorrow is here, we clearly have the strength to fight. Why don't we go out and give it a try? Do you think hiding in the city and surviving forever is a wonderful thing?" Yuntiani continued to roar in displeasure. Alliance Master, although Tiani is a little impulsive, what he said is not without reason. Brother Night Sorrow will always perform amazingly no matter when or where. I think everyone can go out of the city and fight with him. Zhuang He also tried to persuade Ao Qingyun. Even Ao Qingyun's younger cousin, Ao Qingsong, said, "Cousin, Brother Night Sorrow has never disappointed anyone. Let's fight." "That's right. Let's fight," Yuntiani said with clenched fists. Once we activate the array, there's no turning back. The enemy has the Divine King. Even Tianqing was injured by the Divine King. What can we do to fight? Ao Qingyun said with gritted teeth. Everyone's desire to fight was very strong. A few days ago, Long Tianqing had been injured by the enemy's leader in order to rescue the divine sovereign Jinyuan from the cave abode. This proved that the enemy definitely had the Divine King in their camp. This was also the reason why he didn't dare to open the door. Everyone, leave the city and fight with me. I, Night Sorrow, will not disappoint everyone. At that moment, Night Sorrow, who was fighting with many divine sovereigns, shouted after killing a dozen or so divine sovereigns. Although he wasn't afraid of continuing the battle, if the Divine King appeared, he probably wouldn't be able to maintain his divine essence energy. He wouldn't be able to adjust himself to his best condition and use Tianyun Bao under such a concentrated attack. Alliance Master, open the door. Otherwise, I, Yun Tianyi, will kill myself in front of you. Yun Tianyi said with a solemn expression when he heard Night Sorrow's roar. Chapter 2687. Sky-piercing bone pagoda. Night Sorrow, Jingyun, and the others in the clear sky pagoda looked at the 9-story bone pagoda in the sky and immediately felt a sense of familiarity. It was the sky-piercing bone pagoda that suppressed the dark demons in the endless bone realm. The dark demons are here, and so is the sky-piercing bone pagoda. Where is Brother Mo Yuqin? Night Sorrow was first stunned when he saw the sky-piercing bone pagoda flying toward him. Then, an ominous feeling rose in his heart. At this moment, the sky-piercing bone pagoda that had once recognized him as its master was no longer under Night Sorrow's control. He couldn't sense what was inside the bone pagoda at all. What is this? Ao Qingyun, who had been hesitating whether to leave the city and fight, became even more hesitant when he saw the bone pagoda flying toward them. He was afraid that if he made the wrong choice, he would bring disaster to Hai Bei City. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to face his father in the afterlife. Sir. This seems to be the sky-piercing bone pagoda in the endless bone realm. A feather god cultivator behind Ao Qingyun, who had entered the endless bone realm before, replied. Sky-piercing bone pagoda? Can someone explain to me what's going on? Let's observe for a while longer. Ao Qingyun's deep gaze locked onto the sky-piercing bone pagoda as he spoke. Alliance Master, what's the point of asking? Night Sorrow is in danger. Let's go out and reinforce him immediately. Yun Tianyi was almost driven mad by the sight of Night Sorrow being surrounded by countless dark, evil creatures. No one knows what's going on with the sky-piercing bone pagoda outside. How can we risk opening the city gates? Hai Bei City might be massacred. Is one person's life more important, or the lives of thousands of cultivators? A trace of anger appeared on Ao Qingyun's face. In his opinion, there was no problem with his choice. Hai Bei City's defenses were practically impregnable. With such defenses, it wouldn't be a problem to hold out for another 1,000 years. If they could hold out for that long, the God realm would definitely send reinforcements and exterminate all the dark, evil creatures outside. At that time, Hai Bei City's crisis would naturally be resolved. Alliance Master, I'll say it again. Let me out. You have your choice, Yun Tianyi's choice. If you don't open the door, I'm going to do it. Yun Tianyi turned around and glanced at the surrounded Night Sorrow, as well as the sky-reaching bone pagoda that was glaring at her like a tiger watching its prey. Yun Tianyi placed her sword across her neck. To the Dark Alliance, he, who had inherited the Divine King's bloodline, was extremely important. Tianyi, what are you doing? You have fused with the bloodline of the Divine King, and your future is limitless. Why are you being so impulsive today? There was a hint of anger in Ao Qingyun's voice. He felt that Yun Tianyi was a little insensible. Night Sorrow is my most important friend. I, Yun Tianyi, cannot watch him fight alone. Yun Tianyi, whose neck was already bleeding, roared loudly. Tianyi, don't do anything stupid. I can still hold on. Night Sorrow, who was surrounded by more than 30 monarchs and had to pay attention to the sky-reaching bone pagoda, only noticed Yun Tianyi's situation after Jing Yun's reminder. Knight Sorrow roared in response while feeling touched. Brother Yi, I, Yun Tianyi, am useless. I can't open the array formation in front of me and fight alongside you. Yun Tianyi roared in grief and indignation. She wanted to cut her own neck with her sword to show that she had done her best. Tianyi, you don't have to do this. You and I will have a chance to fight side by side in the future. These evil spirits before us can't do anything to me. Knight Sorrow hurriedly tried to persuade her. If he saw Yun Tianyi commit suicide because of him, it would leave an eternal scar in his heart. Brother Yi. Yun Tianyi's hand trembled. At that moment, Elder Zhuang, he said, Alliance Master, open the array formation. Even if we die in battle, it's better than being cowards. That's right. Cousin, locking Yi Shang outside like this while we watch from the sidelines isn't something a normal person can do. Ao Qingsong, who had interacted with Knight Sorrow before, also spoke in a heavy tone. Enough. I, Ao Qingyun, would rather bear the infamy than open the door today. Ao Qingyun snorted coldly and rejected everyone's suggestion. Fine, I won't open it. I, Knight Sorrow, will turn the tide today by myself. Ao Qingyun didn't believe in himself at all. Knight Sorrow was a little angry. If it were him, even if he had to die in battle, he wouldn't watch one person die fighting hundreds of millions of dark creatures. Knight Sorrow, your strength is not bad. I hope that you can find an opportunity to escape on your own. The crisis of High Base City will naturally be resolved by experts in a few years. Don't throw your life away. Ao Qingyun, who was standing on the city wall, tried to persuade Knight Sorrow when he saw the terrifying fighting spirit rising around him. You are in the territory of the heartless Divine King, waiting for experts to rescue High Base City. That is simply a fantasy. Why don't you just hide in the city and deceive yourself? Knight Sorrow replied coldly as he used the Black Heaven Wandering Dragon art to dodge the attacks of many divine lords. His body's defensive capabilities were astonishing. Although he was hit several times, he didn't suffer any fatal injuries. He only looked a little wretched as his body was bathed in black blood. Most of it was the blood of dark creatures. If it were any other time, Knight Sorrow would definitely use the power of merit to disperse the black blood. However, facing so many opponents, he couldn't spare any extra power of merit. Heaven Mystic Technique. Feeling that activating the Treastrimsa heavenly power of merit to increase his combat strength by 10 times was not enough, Knight Sorrow immediately activated the Heaven Mystic technique he had learned along the way, increasing his strength by 13 times. Compared to 10 times, 13 times didn't seem like a huge increase, but in reality, that wasn't the case. After increasing his strength by 13 times, Knight Sorrow's strength reached a level he had never reached before. Not only did the divine essence in his body surge, but his speed also increased significantly. Ever since the sky-reaching bone pagoda appeared, it has been eyeing me covetously. Tianyun Bao should stay behind to deal with it. My strength has increased to such a level that I can use battle to fuel battle. I need to kill all the evil creatures present. The number of dark creatures outside High Base City had already reached an uncountable number. However, the only ones that posed a threat to Knight Sorrow were the 30-odd divine lords in front of him. There was also the sky-reaching bone pagoda floating in the air. It looked a little evil, but it had been holding back all this time. As he pondered, Knight Sorrow prepared to quickly kill some dark creatures to see if he could raise his power of merit to the divine lord level. With this in mind, he used the Eye of the Sea Serpent to avoid a round of attacks from the divine lords. Knight Sorrow immediately used the heavenly Samsara halberd to attack the hundreds of millions of high deity and feather god level evil creatures. In the blink of an eye, almost half of the black creatures around High Base City were burned into golden power of virtue by the raging flames. Countless strands of the power of good karma floated towards Yishan's scene like a magnificent golden firework. Bastard! You bunch of trash, how dare you let a high deity like him act so impudently? Chapter 2688. The Divine King. It's the Divine King's voice. When he heard the furious roar from the sky-piercing bone tower, Knight Sorrow immediately determined that there was a God King inside. "Who are you?" Knight Sorrow asked after a short breather. "I'm the first master of the sky-reaching bone pagoda. I'm also the one who severed the karma between you and the sky-reaching bone pagoda." The eerie voice came from the sky-reaching bone pagoda again. The master of the sky-reaching bone pagoda sneered. "You're smart. After the sky-reaching bone pagoda recognized you as its master, you didn't bring it with you. Otherwise, you would have become my 9th battle servant. So, the people who made the sky-reaching bone pagoda recognize you as its master have all become your battle servants?" Knight Sorrow didn't mention Enchanting, but it was obvious that he was asking about him. When the master of the sky-reaching bone pagoda spoke, all the dark creatures stopped attacking. He seemed to have intimidated everyone present. While he was panting, Yishang swallowed a few recovery pills. "Ha ha ha, don't think I don't know that you're worried about Enchanting." However, the master of the sky-reaching bone pagoda seemed to know what Knight Sorrow was thinking. He summoned, "Enchanting, come out. The rest of you, come out too." After the master of the sky-reaching bone pagoda spoke, 9 puppets appeared in the void one after another. The confused Enchanting was one of them. "Brother!" Knight Sorrow immediately shouted when he saw the unconscious Enchanting. However, Enchanting, who had become a puppet god, didn't react at all. The same went for the other 8 puppets. "Bastard! Master of the sky-reaching bone pagoda, today is the day you die." Enchanting didn't respond at all. Knight Sorrow was furious. "You want to kill me? Easy, just break the sky-reaching bone pagoda." "But how is that possible? You're just a high god. So what if you have a king-grade artifact?" "My sky-reaching bone pagoda has been completely restored to a king-grade artifact." The owner of the sky-reaching bone pagoda controlled the bone pagoda and abruptly sent it crashing towards the defensive formation of High Base City. After colliding with a thin layer of defense, it immediately suffered a ferocious backlash. However, this Divine King level attack triggered by the formation was completely ineffective against the sky-reaching bone pagoda. High Base City's defensive spirit array was hit, and the entire High Base City shook. Alliance leader, the bone pagoda outside is obviously a threat to High Base City's defensive array. Under such circumstances, are you still not going to open the door? Yuntiani spoke again when she saw that High Base City's defensive array was being shaken by the sky-reaching bone pagoda. The one controlling the sky-reaching bone pagoda is the Divine King. If we go out, we'll just be throwing our lives away. If you stay in the city, you still have a chance. Ao Qingyun's brows were frozen with coldness. "Bah! What a coward. You make it sound better than singing, but in the end, you don't have the heart to fight." Yuntiani, who had lost control a long time ago, scolded disdainfully. "Men, help me restrain Yuntiani and lock her in the dungeon of the city lord's residence." Ao Qingyun, who had been offended, had an ugly expression as she coldly ordered. "Let's see who dares to touch me." Yuntiani was completely infuriated by Ao Qingyun's attitude. "So what if we touch you? You've repeatedly offended the alliance leader. Do you still know your place?" A horse-faced divine lord behind Ao Qingyun mocked Yuntiani before using his Dharma treasure to attack and suppress her. At the same time, another divine lord beside him sealed off any possible escape routes that Yuntiani might have. "Why don't you trash and dark creatures have the same ability?" Seeing that Ao Qingyun had ordered people to attack her, Yuntiani directly activated the Divine King bloodline in her body and raised her strength to the maximum, prepared to fight to the death. At this point, she regretted her decision to follow Ao Qingyun. Seeing that Yuntiani was about to fight to the death, Elder Zhuanghe immediately tried to persuade her. "Alliance leader, please show mercy. He has repeatedly offended his superiors. If we don't punish him, we won't be able to stabilize our morale." Ao Qingyun looked coldly at Zhuanghe and said, "Elder Zhuanghe, you are an elder. You should be aware of the current situation. Don't act on impulse like him. Alliance leader, Zhuanghe is not acting on impulse. It's just that in the current situation, he attacked his own people. That's not acceptable. Zhuanghe replied in a low voice. Don't tell me that I have to endure his criticism forever. Ao Qingyun's brows were completely covered in frost. She snorted coldly and said, Take Elder Zhuanghe away as well. You're such an awe-inspiring alliance leader. I'll settle the score with you later. Knight Sorrow had witnessed everything that had happened on the city wall and immediately reprimanded her. You'd better survive the battle first before you talk about anything else. Ao Qingyun, who was glaring at Knight Sorrow angrily, replied indifferently. What he said makes sense. You'd better think about whether you can survive first. As soon as Ao Qingyun finished speaking, the sky-piercing bone pagoda's master, who had just demonstrated the sky-piercing bone pagoda's strength, spoke in a sinister voice. He ordered, 9 golems, all creatures of darkness, spare no expense to kill this merit and virtue high god. Understood. At his command, the 9 puppets, more than 30 godlords, and the remaining hundreds of millions of high gods and feather gods all attacked Knight Sorrow. Kiki. Let's see how you survive such a powerful attack. The number of godlords under the sky-piercing bone pagoda's master had exceeded 40. The number of high gods and feather gods was uncountable. He felt that with such strength, he could completely crush Knight Sorrow. Facing the attacks of so many godlords, Knight Sorrow took out Tianyun Bao from his spatial artifact. Facing the godlords, he transformed his power of merit into arrows and shot out 3 arrows in a row. Although he didn't use the heavenly cloud arrow, the arrows formed from his power of merit were extremely lethal to the dark creatures. The 3 golden arrows traveled through the dark army as if they were unstoppable, constantly reaping the lives of dark evil creatures and converting them into power of merit. What is this energy? The energy of a sovereign divine artifact? The 30 godlords attacking together were all suppressed by Knight Sorrow's arrows of merit. The sky-piercing bone pagoda's master immediately muttered in confusion. You're right. This is a sovereign divine artifact, one that will take your life. At this moment, Knight Sorrow took out a golden heavenly cloud arrow and shot it at the sky-piercing bone pagoda. Now that the divine king of the enemy camp had appeared and given him a chance to recover his divine yuan energy, Knight Sorrow, who had been holding back all this time, finally exploded. The moment Knight Sorrow released the heavenly cloud arrow, the world resonated with it. How can this be? You're just a high god ant. How can you use a sovereign divine artifact? This is impossible. Chapter 2689. At the same time, the owner of the sky-piercing bone pagoda summoned all 9 puppets back into the bone pagoda. He wanted them to help him withstand the impact of the sky cloud arrow. Although the sky cloud arrow was extremely fast, the 9 puppets were connected to the sky-piercing bone pagoda. With a thought from the owner of the sky-piercing bone pagoda, they appeared in the bone pagoda. What? This Knight Sorrow actually has a sovereign-grade divine artifact and can unleash power on par with the divine king? Ao Qingyun, who was standing on the city wall, was so shocked that his mouth could not close when he saw Knight Sorrow use his trump card, the sovereign-grade divine artifact. Alliance Master, should we activate the array now? A godlord who had just restrained Yuntiani and Zhuanghe asked. It's too late to leave the city now. Ao Qingyun sighed and said, release Tiani and Elder Zhuanghe. I've said it before. Brother Yishang never disappoints. Yuntiani said angrily after being unsealed. From now on, I, Yuntiani, will never speak ill of anyone from the Dark Alliance again. I, Zhuanghe, will also withdraw from the Dark Alliance. Zhuanghe shook his head and sighed. Due to his limited cultivation talent, he was still a high god. He had once held a high position in the Dark Alliance, but he no longer had any right to speak. Didn't you just find a new backer? Don't forget, it was I, Ao Qingyun, who saved you back then. Ao Qingyun said with a dark expression as he faced the 2 who chose to withdraw. When he raised his head to look at Yi Shan again, there was a complicated look in his eyes. At this moment, Night Sorrow's sky cloud arrow had already struck the sky-piercing bone pagoda. Although the sky-piercing bone pagoda defended with all its might, it was still shaken like a collapsed house. I thought you could unleash a sovereign great attack, but I didn't expect you to only be at the Divine King's level. Although the bone pagoda was somewhat shattered, the owner of the sky-piercing bone pagoda laughed. Then, the sky-piercing bone pagoda recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, thousands of lightning bolts appeared around him like spiderwebs. These thunderous Night Sorrow felt both familiar and unfamiliar. What was familiar was the aura, but what was unfamiliar was that these thunderbolts were obviously not at the level of a high god, but at the level of a divine king. As long as you don't destroy the entire bone pagoda, I can repair it endlessly. Die. The owner of the sky-reaching bone tower roared proudly and sent the bone tower crashing towards Night Sorrow. Husband, be careful. The sky-reaching bone pagoda, a king-class divine artifact, came crashing down. Jing Yun, who was in the clear sky pagoda, immediately warned. In fact, it wasn't just her. From the perspective of Sikong Chuyu and the others, they also felt that the sky-reaching bone pagoda was coming at them. However, they had been with Night Sorrow for a long time and were already used to this kind of situation. Don't worry, I'm fine. Facing the crushing sky-reaching bone pagoda, Night Sorrow, whose body was constantly absorbing the power of merit, bit his finger. He continuously poured his blood onto Tianyun Bao's bow. After absorbing Night Sorrow's blood, Tianyun Bao, who had once again turned into a bone bao, rapidly grew flesh and dragon scales. Destroy. When he was attacking just now, Night Sorrow had been worrying about Mo Yuqian. However, on second thought, Mo Yuqian had already been refined into a puppet, so he didn't care anymore. He wanted to destroy the sky-reaching bone pagoda first. With a roar, Night Sorrow shot out another heavenly cloud arrow. Buzz! The resonance of heaven and earth caused by this arrow was about 3 times stronger than the previous one. Boom! The heavenly cloud arrow and the sky-reaching bone pagoda collided once more. The sky-reaching bone pagoda was like rubble that had been smashed by a heavy hammer, scattering in the void. Good. Brother Night Sorrow is indeed valiant. He's invincible. The Horn Race's patriarch, Jiao Kong, who was very worried about Night Sorrow, let out a long sigh. Without a doubt, if Night Sorrow had been defeated, his Horn Race might have been exterminated. Brother Yi. Amazing. Yin Tianyi, who was watching from the city wall, praised. Then he looked at Ao Qingyun and said, a true expert will have an invincible and fearless aura. You clearly don't have that. It's none of your business. Ao Qingyun replied coldly. Also, do you really think Night Sorrow destroyed the sky-reaching bone pagoda? As Ao Qingyun spoke, the sky-reaching bone pagoda recovered at a visible speed. Kiki. I said before that you can't destroy the sky-reaching bone pagoda. After replying, the sky-reaching bone pagoda's master coldly mocked Night Sorrow. Seeing the sky-reaching bone pagoda regenerate after such a powerful attack, and its aura was no weaker than before. Yin Tianyi, who was on the city wall, clenched his fists regretfully. In the clear heaven pagoda, the Night Moon Race, the Horn Race, and Shao Tianxian Race, as well as Night Sorrow's friends, were all worried for him. They knew that the attack just now was already the strongest attack that Night Sorrow could unleash. If even his strongest attack did not completely destroy the sky-reaching bone pagoda, the consequences would be unimaginable. It's fine. It's not a hopeless situation yet. Sensing everyone's worry in the clear heaven pagoda, Night Sorrow comforted them and began to think of a strategy. If Long Tianxing lost to the sky-reaching bone pagoda's master, he felt that it was completely understandable. Because this pagoda was really difficult to deal with. At the end of the day, it's still because I'm not strong enough. If I can advance to Divine Lord, I can definitely use Tianyun Bao to unleash an even stronger attack. While pondering, Knight Sorrow once again locked his gaze on Divine Lord Darkness, who was suppressed by the 3 merit arrows. He thought to himself that with more than 30 Divine Lords, plus countless high gods and feather gods, he might be able to advance to Divine Lord merit. Therefore, he used the Heavenly Cloud arrow again to shatter the sky-reaching bone pagoda. Knight Sorrow took out another Heavenly Cloud arrow and shot it directly at the Dark Demon who was in battle. Although the Dark Demon was an invincible Divine Lord level dark creature, facing the Divine King level Heavenly Cloud arrow, it had no ability to resist at all and was directly killed. While absorbing the power of merit converted from the Dark Demon, Knight Sorrow summoned back the Heavenly Cloud arrow and shot it at the soul-devouring beast leader. Similarly, there was no suspense at all. The soul-devouring beast leader was also directly killed by the Heavenly Cloud arrow and turned into a dazzling golden power of merit. After continuously absorbing the power of merit, Knight Sorrow's power of merit quickly reached peak high god level. This speed of improvement could be said to be very fast, but Knight Sorrow did not feel anything strange. Not good. If this continues, all the dark creatures present will become his nourishment. It is very likely that he will break through to Divine Lord level because of this. Seeing Knight Sorrow break through one by one, continuously killing the dark creatures and absorbing the power of merit converted from them, the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda's master said. While controlling the Bone Pagoda to crash into Knight Sorrow, the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda's master coldly threatened, "If you don't surrender, I will completely destroy Enchanting's divine soul." As the Divine King, don't you find it ridiculous to say such things? Knight Sorrow completely ignored the other's words and continued to attack the other Divine Lord level dark creatures. Chapter 2690. As the number of dark creatures gradually decreased, the darkness surrounding High Base City gradually returned to its original brightness. Even the shadows that shrouded High Base City also disappeared. Many cultivators noticed this and began to walk up the city walls to watch the battle outside the city. However, Knight Sorrow was currently shrouded in a dazzling golden light. Even those who had seen him before could not confirm his true identity. Some of the more trusting cultivators began to ask who the others were. Without a doubt, Knight Sorrow had become the hero of High Base City. City Lord Ao Qingyun's expression darkened. After he became City Lord, he had indeed helped High Base City activate the array set up by their predecessors. However, he had not killed a single dark creature. Hearing the cheers of the people in the city, jealousy rose in his heart. Just as Ao Qingyun was feeling uneasy, Knight Sorrow had already killed all the dark creatures outside the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda. Not a single one was left. After absorbing the power of virtue of dozens of divine lords and countless high god and feather god level dark creatures, his power of virtue had successfully broken through to the divine lord level. Although his strength had soared recently, Knight Sorrow did not feel uncomfortable. After all, he had already fought against the Divine King and could calmly face a Divine Lord. However, although his power of virtue had broken through to the Divine Lord level, Knight Sorrow could not be considered a true Divine Lord. His cultivation, body, and divine soul had yet to reach the Divine Lord level. He needed to cultivate to follow the power of virtue and truly advance to the Divine Lord level. As for the Divine Lord Tribulation, it was not difficult for Knight Sorrow. It was only a matter of time before he broke through to the Divine Lord level. Furthermore, it was very likely that he had taken the shortest time to advance from Feather God to Divine Lord in the history of the Divine Realm. I said that if you don't stop, I will kill and erase Enchanting's divine soul. The owner of the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda was completely enraged when he saw countless of his subordinates being killed. His cold and sinister voice came from the Bone Pagoda, sending chills down the spines of those who heard it. Many cultivators watching from the city walls felt as if their heads were about to explode when they heard the demonic voice of the Divine King level. Azure Rock's soul-splitting roar. First style, 3 roars break reincarnation. Noticing the state of some of the low-level cultivators in the city, Knight Sorrow immediately used 3 roars to break the cycle of reincarnation, cutting off the pressure that the owner of the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda brought to High Base City. Looks like you're a merit god. No, he's a merit divine lord. He's very virtuous. The words of the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda's master revealed a hint of a conspiracy. No. I'm not thinking about saving people, I'm thinking about killing people. Get ready to come out of your turtle shell. The voice of the sky-split Bone Pagoda's master gave Night Sorrow a foreboding premonition. In addition, the other party still hadn't attacked Mo Yuqian. He was prepared to use his strongest attack once his power of virtue reached the Divine Lord realm and directly shatter the sky-split Bone Pagoda. Hee hee. You'd better be prepared to welcome the death of your friends, as well as the misery and suffering of High Base City. The owner of the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda's voice grew colder and colder. At the same time, the puppet made from Mo Yuqian's soul suddenly floated out from the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda. It floated towards the defensive array of High Base City. Its speed was not fast, but it made people feel fearful. Not good. Everyone, retreat. Seeing the puppet that looked like Mo Yuqian floating towards the defensive array of High Base City, City Lord Qingyun immediately raised his head. The City Lord, Ao Qingyun, immediately warned loudly. He had a feeling that a great disaster was about to befall him. He guessed that the puppet in front of him should have a very lethal attack power. Brother. At this moment, Night Sorrow sensed that it was indeed Mo Yuqian's soul. He, who was originally prepared to use his strongest attack on the sky-split Bone Pagoda, immediately hesitated. At this moment, the turbid eyes of the puppet that looked like Mo Yuqian suddenly became clear. It transmitted its voice to Night Sorrow. Brother Night Sorrow, as long as this puppet body of mine collides with the defensive array, it will immediately explode. Its power is 100 times stronger than an ordinary king-grade talisman. If you have the ability, immediately destroy the sky-split Bone Pagoda. Otherwise, quickly escape. Brother. I will completely destroy this sky-split Bone Pagoda. Hearing Mo Yuqian's transmission, Night Sorrow's heart trembled. While he was worried, he spat a mouthful of heart blood on Tianyun Bao and infused the power of virtue into the 3 sky cloud arrows. They suddenly shot towards the sky-split Bone Pagoda. The 3 sky cloud arrows were shot out one after another at an astonishing speed. Even a divine lord would not be able to see them clearly with the naked eye. They were all aimed at a single point. Bang! 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 Just as Mo Yuqian's puppet was about to reach the defensive array of High Base City, the 3 sky cloud arrows bombarded the sky-split Bone Pagoda. At the same time that the sky-split Bone Pagoda's body was shattered, the sky cloud arrows infused with the power of virtue rampaged through the sky-split Bone Pagoda. How can this be? The sky-split Bone Pagoda's owner's roar was quickly heard. Not long after his voice fell, a large amount of black gas emerged from the sky-split Bone Pagoda. Under the attack of the sky cloud arrows, the sky-split Bone Pagoda was completely shattered and turned into dust. Mo Yuqian, who was originally floating towards High Base City, immediately stopped. The other 8 divine lords, who had been turned into puppets by the sky-split Bone Pagoda's owner, rushed out of the sky-split Bone Pagoda, their turbid eyes clearing up. Night Sorrow, did you save us? After waking up, these Sir Gods observed their surroundings and immediately understood what was going on. Among them, except for the last divine lord, the rest had seen Night Sorrow challenge the sky-split Bone Pagoda and recognized him. At this time, Mo Yuqian transmitted his voice to Night Sorrow. That black evil gas is the owner of the sky-split Bone Pagoda. Be careful. So you, the Divine King, are just a ball of evil gas. Seeing the owner of the sky-split Bone Pagoda turn into a ball of black gas and fly into the distance, preparing to escape. Night Sorrow swallowed a recovery pill, took out a sky cloud arrow, knocked an arrow, and shot towards the black gas. Do you think I'm so easy to deal with? Just as Night Sorrow shot the sky cloud arrow at the ball of black gas, a blurry figure that looked like water ripples suddenly appeared behind Yishang. After it appeared, it turned into a ball of evil black gas and directly entered Yishang's body. Although you can rely on external forces to fight with the Divine King, your divine soul is still in the Divine Soul. But your divine soul is far from the Divine King's level, right? Prepare to bid farewell to this world. I will take your place. A cold and evil voice sounded in Night Sorrow's mind. Are you trying to strengthen my divine soul and help it reach the Divine Lord level? Feeling the pain of his divine soul being devoured, Night Sorrow, who had shot the sky cloud arrow with all his might, focused his mind to resist the evil gas that had possessed his body. Chapter 2691. Hee, you think too much. I can't be devoured. What awaits you is tragedy. The cold voice seemed to come from the depths of hell. It sounded in Night Sorrow's mind like the explosion of a king-level divine talisman. Even though Night Sorrow's divine soul had been strengthened to the level of the divine king, he still felt like his divine soul was being torn apart. Brother Night Sorrow, be careful. Against it, you must protect your heart. Mo Yuqian knew that his voice would distract Night Sorrow, but he still reminded him, you might have to go through a long process, maybe 1,000 years or even a few reincarnations. But reality only lasts for a moment. Don't be afraid of the passage of time. Okay. Brother, your reminder is very important. Night Sorrow replied. He felt that Mo Yuqian's reminder was very useful. If he hadn't said that, he would have been worried that he would miss the chance to save Wu Ling concubine if he fought against the sky-reaching Bone Pagoda for too long. Brother Night Sorrow, don't underestimate it. It's very scary. Otherwise, we wouldn't have fallen for it. Mo Yuqian continued to remind him. In the end, he realized that his emotions had been controlled by the owner of the Sky Bone Pagoda during the battle. Later on, his decisions had been influenced by the other party. Brother, don't worry. Night Sorrow has never lost in a test of willpower. Night Sorrow replied Mo Yuqian and wholeheartedly fought against the owner of the Sky Bone Pagoda. Strictly speaking, the other party was just a ball of evil energy. Never lost? That's because you haven't met me. The owner of the Sky Bone Pagoda, the evil voice, exploded in Night Sorrow's mind. What right do you have to call yourself me? You're just a ball of waste. Night Sorrow replied as he seriously fought against the owner of the Sky Bone Pagoda. There was no fixed pattern in a battle of divine souls. It wasn't just a battle of divine souls, it was also a battle of willpower. The owner of the Sky Bone Pagoda was a ball of evil energy. It had no emotions and was at the level of the divine king. It was basically invulnerable. Otherwise, Mo Yuqian and the other unrivaled divine lords wouldn't have fallen for it. Waste gas? Very soon, you will become a mindless puppet, even worse than the waste gas. I have yet to refine the merit divine lord's body. The master of the sky-piercing Bone Pagoda said evilly as he launched a powerful attack on Night Sorrow's divine soul. Yi Shang's soul felt like smoke being blown by the wind after being attacked by an outsider. He felt as though his soul was drifting. You want to turn me, Night Sorrow, into a puppet? Such a person doesn't exist. Night Sorrow, who felt his divine soul becoming more and more violent, began to use all kinds of methods to increase the strength of his divine soul to fight against it. In the beginning, Night Sorrow felt like he was holding his breath. He felt like he wouldn't be able to hold on for long, but after a while, he gradually got used to the rhythm. Furthermore, under the influence of the power of merit, Night Sorrow's divine soul gradually became stronger, rising towards the level of a divine lord. This increase in strength put a great deal of pressure on the master of the Skysplit Bone Pagoda. When Yi Shang's divine soul was about to reach the divine lord realm, the master of the Skysplit Bone Pagoda launched a fierce attack on Yi Shang's divine sea. You overestimate yourself. Not much time had passed in the outside world, but Night Sorrow felt like he had been fighting against the master of the sky-piercing Bone Pagoda for 300,000 years. After 300,000 years of fighting, the strength of his divine soul seemed to have cultivated for 300,000 years. Although he hadn't officially advanced to the level of a divine lord, he wasn't inferior to an ordinary divine king. Night Sorrow, who had been shrinking his defenses, completely released his divine soul at this moment to fight against the master of the sky-piercing Bone Pagoda. Brother Night Sorrow, nothing will happen, right? After all, the opponent is at the level of a divine king. Jiao Kong asked worriedly in the clear sky pagoda as Night Sorrow's divine soul fought a decisive battle with the master of the sky-piercing bone pagoda. My husband has never disappointed anyone. Nothing will happen to him. He will be the master of the sky-piercing bone pagoda. Sikong Chuyu replied confidently after hearing Jiao Kong's words. She had witnessed everything that Night Sorrow had gone through and had absolute confidence in him. Lin Piaomiao recalled the scene of Night Sorrow's battle outside Tianhuang City and said with certainty, "My husband was born to turn the tide. This test is nothing to him." "All right. I can rest assured then," Jiao Kong said with lingering fear. Recently, Night Sorrow had been fighting against people of a higher level than him and had even faced the threat of a divine lord. Jiao Kong could be said to be on tenterhooks. The person chosen by the patriarch was really not a simple existence. On the other side, for Haibei City, the moment Night Sorrow destroyed the sky-piercing bone pagoda, the crisis in the outer city had been averted. Most of the cultivators in Haibei City cheered as they looked at the gradually brightening blue sky outside the city. At this moment, Yun Tianyi shouted. Many people knew that the person who had saved them was Night Sorrow and started shouting Night Sorrow's name. "Everyone, please keep quiet. Currently, Brother Night Sorrow is still fighting." The cheers were a little loud. Mo Qianqian, who was in the form of a puppet, reminded everyone. Hearing this, the cheering crowd in the city gradually calmed down. They locked their gazes on Night Sorrow, who was surrounded by a golden aura and a black aura, and silently prayed for him. "Don't worry, you won't be able to affect Night Sorrow. If I'm not wrong, Night Sorrow has completely taken the initiative." At this moment, Long Tianqing suddenly flew over from afar. She used the power of her soul to check on Yishang's condition, and then she said something to everyone. "Phew. It's good that Brother Night Sorrow is fine." Mo Qianqian heaved a long sigh of relief when he heard Long Tianqing's words. However, Long Tianqing looked at Mo Yuqian with a serious expression. "Your condition," they were old acquaintances who had known each other for many years. "You're right. My divine soul will be destroyed. Not only me, but the other 8 invincible divine lords will also be destroyed after the Bone Pagoda's master dies. We're now connected to the Bone Pagoda's master," Mo Qianqian said solemnly. "In other words, only one of you and Night Sorrow can survive. Am I right?" Long Tianqing's voice was trembling. She had used all her strength to protect Divine Lord Jinyuan from the sky-piercing Bone Pagoda's master. Now, she was powerless to prevent a tragedy from happening. "I hope that Brother Night Sorrow survives. It's a blessing for the realm of the gods that he has the initiative," Mo Qianqian said with emotion. "That's right. Rather than living like this, we might as well be completely destroyed." Another invincible divine lord controlled by the sky-piercing bone pagoda also said. To these geniuses, what had happened in the past few years was like a nightmare. Let's see if Night Sorrow can completely kill the other party. Chapter 2692. In the end, the golden light and the black light formed 2 dragons that coiled around Night Sorrow's body and fought against each other. When the golden dragon was first formed, it was not as thick as the black dragon. However, as time passed, it gradually grew stronger and started to gain the upper hand. Night Sorrow, who was fighting against the heaven-reaching Bone Pagoda, was in a similar situation. He went from being passive at the start to gaining the upper hand. Impossible. How is this possible? I am the Divine King. How can I lose to a high god like you? The owner of the heaven-reaching Bone Pagoda said in disbelief when Night Sorrow launched his final attack. You are wrong. In terms of divine soul, I am already a divine lord. As he resisted, Night Sorrow's divine soul reached the level of a lower divine lord. After his divine soul reached the level of a divine lord, the owner of the heaven-reaching Bone Pagoda was completely suppressed. Very quickly, Night Sorrow, who had gained the upper hand in the fight, successfully annihilated his opponent. After completely killing the owner of the heaven-reaching Bone Pagoda, Night Sorrow found a problem. After the owner's divine soul was killed, another deity sea formed beside his deity sea. This deity ocean was in a completely unconscious state. Is it really an unconscious deity sea or a trap left by the owner of the heaven-reaching bone pagoda? Knight Sorrow used his divine soul to sense for a while but did not find the owner of the heaven-reaching bone pagoda. He immediately used his divine soul to enter the deity sea to check. When Knight Sorrow's divine soul entered the deity sea, he found that he had gained control of the deity sea. It was as if the deity sea had recognized him as its owner. What's going on? Will I have two deity seas in the future? Knight Sorrow felt the state of his divine soul and wondered. After testing it, he found that he indeed had two deity seas. Each of them could use the power of the divine soul. However, the new one was slightly weaker than the original. The two divine souls could use the power of the divine soul. They could merge together or do two things at the same time. It was very magical. This should be a good thing, right? As Knight Sorrow was thinking, he suddenly had a thought. He found that the new deity sea's divine soul could control Mo Qian and the other invincible divine lords. Brother? Knight Sorrow used this divine soul to try to communicate with Mo Qian. Brother Knight Sorrow? You are fine? Mo Qian asked doubtfully as he felt the voice in the depths of his soul. He felt that this was a bit strange. In the past, it was always the master of the bone pagoda who used this method to communicate with him. I'm fine. The master of the sky-reaching bone pagoda should have been completely destroyed. Knight Sorrow deity sea, he continued, after he disappeared, deity sea, deity sea, deity, deity sea. I deity sea, deity deity. Deity. It seems that even if it is destroyed, the 9 of us won't be completely destroyed. God deity God deity God, deity of the hand, deity pagoda. Deity soul. Deity of the pagoda. God got it. Bone. After listening to Mo Qian's story, Knight Sorrow said, Brother, don't worry. I will let you and the others regain your freedom. Brother Knight Sorrow, thank you. I didn't expect that I, Mo Qian, would regain my freedom in my lifetime. Mo Qian said with some emotion. After the Heavenly Bone Pagoda's master advanced to the Divine King level, he completely erupted. Not only did he disperse Knight Sorrow's imprint, he also controlled an invincible divine monarch and released all the evil creatures around High Bay City. He also controlled the 9 invincible divine monarchs to launch a tide-like attack on High Bay City. Now that Knight Sorrow had destroyed him, not only did he save High Bay City, he also saved the 9 invincible divine monarchs. Brother, and the others, please wait a moment. I will make some arrangements and find a way to restore your freedom. Knight Sorrow deity sea told Mo Qian and the other 8 invincible divine monarchs before coming back to his senses. He said to his family in the Clear Sky Pagoda, the Heavenly Bone Pagoda's master has been destroyed by me. This storm is over. Good. Little 13, you really didn't disappoint us. Hearing Knight Sorrow's familiar voice, Yang Lei, who was originally very nervous, immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Sikong Chuyu, Lin Piaomiao and the others, who were very confident in Knight Sorrow, also heaved a sigh of relief. The others in the Clear Sky Pagoda were also the same. After all, Knight Sorrow had become their backbone now. Knight Sorrow's grandfather, Yi Linghuan, was sure that he had overcome the crisis. He coughed and said, now that the crisis is over, everyone should seize the time to cultivate. So that we don't have to hide here the next time we encounter a battle. Yes. Grandfather's words make sense. Jing Yun will work hard to become stronger. Among the people present, Jing Yun, as a divine monarch, was very strong. As long as she improved a little more, she would be able to fight side by side with Knight Sorrow. I won't fall behind either. Lin Piaomiao, who had the sovereign bloodline in her body, also did not want to fall behind. She realized that after the sovereign bloodline appeared, her cultivation speed was doubled with half the effort. Her strength increased at an extremely fast speed. Good. All of you are good. But you are all a female army. The men of the Night Moon Empire have to work hard. Yi Linghuan said with a smile. These words made some of the people present think of Yi Xiaoluo, Yi Lingxi, and Yi Xiaokei, who had gone out to train. Now, all of them had gone out to train and there was no news of them. I wonder how the three children are doing now. Thinking of Yi Xiaoluo and the others, Datura could not help but sigh worriedly. Their talents are so outstanding. No matter where they are now, they should be able to develop well. Xueshi replied and said, I believe that when our immortal divine territory is established, they will rush back. Yes. I believe that the three of them will come back strong. Lin Piaomiao thought of her son, Yi Xiaokei. Although she was worried, she was similarly confident. Because not only was he Knight Soro's son, but he also might have inherited his sovereign bloodline. In terms of talent, he should be ranked in the top in the entire divine realm. While the women were lamenting, Knight Soro was currently conversing with Long Tianqing, inquiring about her injuries. He also told her what sect Master Xiao Tianxian said before. Hearing that there was news of the Heavenly Luan Myriad Transformations pill, Long Tianqing was very happy and said, Now, Big Brother Yuan's condition is already stable. As long as we get the Heavenly Luan Myriad Transformations pill, he can completely recover. Next, you let Brother Qian and the rest regain their freedom first. Alright, I have the same intention. When Knight Soro heard this, he did not hesitate and controlled the second divine C to release Mo Youqian's divine soul control. Chapter 2693. Completely recover. Not only will we regain our freedom, but we will also have the chance to completely recover. Become a cultivator with flesh and blood? One of the puppet-turned invincible divine lords exclaimed in disbelief when he heard Knight Soro's words. Today's events had given him hope of being reborn after countless years of despair. This was something he had never dared to dream of. If we can really recover, I suggest that we all work for Brother Knight Soro. This is the only way we can repay him. Mo Qianqian, who was also very excited, said. He now felt that helping Knight Soro in the Endless Bone Realm was the best decision he had ever made in his life. It was the exact opposite of nurturing Wuxin. Knight Soro hurriedly shook his head when he heard Mo Qianqian's words. Brother, you're too polite. If not for your help in the Endless Bone Realm, I wouldn't have been able to obtain the Genesis Essence to strengthen my body. Without the Genesis Essence, I would have already died in battle in the Endless Bone Realm. How could I be where I am today? Little brother Knight Soro, there's no need to be so polite. Let alone these small favors, even if it's a bigger favor, what you've done today is more than enough to repay. The Heavenly 1000 Transformations pill will definitely allow you to continue taking risks. That will be a new favor. Mo Qianqian said politely. He felt that Knight Soro had already done him a great favor by shattering the heaven-reaching bone tower and saving him. If he accepted the Heavenly 1000 Transformations pill but did nothing, he wouldn't be able to overcome the barrier in his heart. That's right. Brother Knight Soro, there's no need to be so polite. Whether or not you have the Heavenly 1000 Transformations pill, Xiong Nanhua will follow your lead in the future. Xiong Nanhua, the tallest puppet among the 9 divine lords, said in a deep voice. After he spoke, the remaining 7 divine lords also spoke one after another, saying that they would follow Knight Soro no matter what. When they had been controlled by the master of the heaven-reaching bone tower, their lives had been worse than death. Knight Soro had saved them today, which was akin to giving them a new lease of life. Even the coldest person would show some gratitude. If no one has a place to go, Knight Soro will establish the immortal divine domain after breaking through to the divine lord realm. If you have family or sect, I suggest you choose to return. Looking at the few invincible Sir Gods who had been turned into puppets, Knight Soro said. These words were equivalent to giving them true freedom, allowing them to choose their future path according to their wishes. When the few invincible Sir Gods present heard Knight Soro's words, they felt very comfortable. Seeing that the matter had come to an end, Long Tianqing asked, Night Sorrow, when can we head to the secret realm? At the very least, I'll have to wait until I'm a divine sovereign. I heard that it was the sovereign's Tao Right temple. Although the sovereign's essence has been taken away, there are still other resources there. I'm afraid that it will cause a large-scale struggle. Night Sorrow transmitted his voice to Long Tianqing. He didn't want the matter of Nine Heaven Divine Palace to be exposed. If the Divine King or even the sovereigns came to fight for it, things would get troublesome. After all, Shao Tianxian had only told this to him. That makes sense. We'll head there after you've stabilized your strength. Long Tianqing nodded and transmitted her voice. I was too anxious. From the looks of it, with your strength, you can definitely defeat Ling Yun. Shall I bring you to find him? All right. Senior Tianqing, Night Sorrow has the same intention. Night Sorrow and Long Tianqing discussed this matter for a while before looking at Mo Yuqian and the others. If you don't have a place to stay for the time being, you can enter my spatial artifact to cultivate. After Night Sorrow spoke, Mo Yuqian and the others, who had no choice, entered the Clear Sky Pagoda. This spatial artifact is incredible. The god's spiritual energy is so strong, and the spatial acceleration is at least 10 times faster. Mo Yuqian was shocked to discover that Night Sorrow's Clear Sky Pagoda was comparable to the Sky-reaching Bone Pagoda. After all, Night Sorrow was just an ordinary feather god a few years ago. It's indeed incredible. Even the Divine King, who has accumulated a lot of experience, might not have such a spatial artifact. Long Tianqing, who had entered the Clear Sky Pagoda to observe, was an array formation expert. She also praised. You're too kind. Night Sorrow was just lucky. Night Sorrow introduced everyone in the Clear Sky Pagoda before coming to the area where the Divine King of the Golden Crow tribe, Jin Mia, was in seclusion. Lord Night Sorrow. You're here. When he saw Yi Shang appear, Jin Mia, who had been meditating and recovering from his injuries, immediately stood up and spoke respectfully. No need to be so polite. Just call me Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow replied and asked, Do you know why I didn't summon you when I was fighting against the dark creatures? This should be because Lord Night Sorrow had absolute confidence in defeating the other party? Jin Mia asked doubtfully. He didn't omit the word Lord. In fact, I didn't have absolute confidence in winning. But if you took action, I wouldn't be able to obtain a lot of power of virtue. I wouldn't be able to advance my power of virtue to the Divine Lord level. I wouldn't be able to break through to the Divine Lord level in other aspects. This can be considered as seeking fortune in danger. Night Sorrow explained. He couldn't be bothered to argue about how to address Jin Mia. Since Jin Mia called him that so easily, he didn't fuss about it. Jin Mia looked at Yi Shang and asked, Lord Yi Shang, is something the matter for you to come over now? Next, I'll be following Senior Long Tianqing to find an enemy and fight to the death with him. Now that Senior Long Tianqing is injured, I need to use the time on the road to cultivate and prepare to advance my cultivation to the Divine Lord level. So I need to trouble you to protect everyone's safety on the road. Night Sorrow said slowly. Jin Mia smiled and said, Isn't this my duty after leaving the Golden Crow ancient realm? All right. Then I'll have to trouble Mr. Jin Mia. Night Sorrow said politely when he saw Jin Mia agree. It's no trouble, no trouble. It's my honor to be able to do something for Night Sorrow and form good karma. Jin Mia was extremely shocked when he thought that Night Sorrow could defeat the Divine King. After all, there wasn't even an example of a Divine Lord defeating the Divine King in the Divine Realm. Moreover, Night Sorrow's cultivation speed also broke his understanding. Jin Mia felt that one day, Night Sorrow might be strong enough to sweep across the entire Divine Realm. Mr. Jin Mia, you're too polite. Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble you. I still have some things to take care of, so I'll go first. Night Sorrow said to Jin Mia and walked out of the Clear Sky Pagoda because he noticed that Yuntiani and Zhuanghe had already walked out of High Base City. After exiting the clear sky pagoda, he went up to them. Brother Yi. People always say that a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. This sentence is simply a perfect fulfillment for you. It hasn't been long since we last met, and not only can you rely on your own strength to kill so many Divine Lord-level dark creatures, you can even fight against the Divine King. This really shocked everyone. Chapter 2694. Tianyi, since when did you become such a bootlicker? When Yi Shang saw the two of them approaching, he smiled and replied politely, Elder Zhuanghe, I'm sorry. Long time no see. Night Sorrow, you're already close to the peak of the celestial realm. Even the Divine King is no match for you. Zhuanghe smiled and continued, I'm no longer an elder of the Dark Alliance. Oh. What's going on? Night Sorrow asked. Sigh. Alliance Master Ao Qingyun is too narrow-minded. Tianyi and I have fallen out with him. We have nowhere else to go, so we're going to join Night Sorrow. What do you think? Zhuanghe said with a smile. He was still a high god at the moment, but his aura was extraordinary. If the two of you choose to join us, I, Night Sorrow, will welcome you with open arms. Night Sorrow mentioned the immortal dominion with a smile. His goal was to build a dominion that was on par with the sovereigns. This required a lot of talent. Especially trustworthy people, he needed a lot of them. He welcomed Zhuanghe and Yun Tianyi to join him. Yun Tianyi immediately smiled. Brother Yi, I didn't expect you to leave Tianyun School and start your own sect. That's great, we brothers can make a name for ourselves. Making a name for ourselves is a must. But if we build a dominion, we won't be targeted by the sovereigns. If we want to expand, we'll have to go against the Divine King's forces. Although we can fight against the Divine King, we don't have many forces under us. If we go to war, we won't be able to do anything. Yi Shang voiced his concern. Currently, the immortal divine realm lacked talents. That's indeed a problem. But it's not hard to get close. As long as we have the resources, many cultivators will join us. Zhuanghe pondered for a moment and said, How big is the Immortal Dominion's territory? I'm not sure yet. Once I'm done here, I'll go look for Hegemon Tianyi. As for how big it is, that will depend on his mood. Night Sorrow said with a smile. To him, it didn't matter how big the immortal domain was in the early stages. As long as he could stabilize the Night Moon Empire and his friends, that was enough. I heard that Ling Yun is quite talented. Among divine lords, he's considered very hard to deal with. When Night Sorrow mentioned Ling Yun, Yun Tianyi said worriedly. Now that I can even fight against the Divine King, killing Ling Yun shouldn't be too difficult. Upon hearing Yun Tianyi's words, Night Sorrow asked in confusion. After all, Yun Tianyi and Zhuanghe had just witnessed his battle with the owner of the sky-reaching bone pagoda on the city wall. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but I heard that Ling Yun was extremely evil. It seems that no one who went against him had a good ending. Yun Tianyi said with uncertainty. Before this, he didn't know that Night Sorrow had a feud with Ling Yun, but he had heard about him. It was clear that Ling Yun had a certain reputation in the realm of the gods. The last time I saw him was not many years ago. Back then, he was a divine lord. No matter how strong he is now, he shouldn't be that strong, right? Night Sorrow felt that his cultivation speed had already created a legend in the realm of the gods. No matter how fast Ling Yun's cultivation speed was, it was unlikely that he was stronger than him. Even so, you still have to be careful. After all, in the realm of the gods, there are too many cases of people failing miserably. Elder Zhuanghe reminded him solemnly. He had also heard some things about Ling Yun and felt that something was amiss. All right. I'll be extra careful. Night Sorrow replied. He looked into the distance and asked, that city lord Ao Fang's son, Ao Qingyun, right? Seeing Ao Qingyun rushing over with his men, Yun Tianyi said with disdain, It's him. I really misjudged him in the past. After all, he's the descendant of a wise man. There are some things that should be forgiven if it's possible. Knight Sorrow was originally a little annoyed that Ao Qingyun did not send help. However, he felt that the other party's choice was actually pardonable, so he did not take it to heart. He was confident that he would definitely win. He did not even call out Jin Mia, but the other party did not know his trump card. Haha. Brother Yi, hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. I've heard so much about you. Ao Qingyun, did not open the door just now out of consideration for the safety of the hundreds of millions of people in Haibei City. Please don't take it to heart, Brother Knight Sorrow. Knight Sorrow was communicating with Yun Tianyi and Zhuang He through voice transmission when Ao Qingyun, who was thousands of miles away, greeted him. Hello, Brother Ao. Knight Sorrow admires you and your father very much. Knight Sorrow said with cupped fists. One would not slap a smiling face. Although Ao Qingyun had acted unfavorably toward Yun Tianyi back then, nothing had happened in the end, so he did not want to take it to heart. Brother Knight Sorrow has saved the entire Haibei City. As the city lord, Ao Qingyun invites Brother Yi to the city for a chat and give the people a chance to see your glory. After getting closer, Ao Qingyun said politely and continued, I've already asked my wife to prepare a banquet. Why don't you, Brother Yi, Brother Yun, and Elder Zhuang come to my residence for a chat? We've already fallen out. What's there to chat about? Upon hearing Ao Qingyun's words, Yun Tianyi retorted angrily. Zhuang He was more magnanimous and advised, Tianyi, don't speak like that. After all, the city lord of Qingyun City once saved our lives. Then, he looked at Knight Sorrow and said, Brother Knight Sorrow, if it's not too urgent, why don't you have a meal before leaving? All right. Since the city lord of Qingyun City invited me and Elder Zhuang He said so, then Knight Sorrow will impose on you for a day. Knight Sorrow glanced at Yun Tianyi, indicating that there was no need, and then replied. Ao Qingyun's eyes lit up when he heard that. He made an inviting gesture and said, Brother Knight Sorrow, please. All right. Let's go. At this time, Long Tianqing, Jin Mia, and the rest were all in the clear heaven pagoda and did not appear. Only Yun Tianyi and Zhuang He were by Knight Sorrow's side. He replied and walked in front. When they approached the city gates of Haibei City, a large number of cultivators had already gathered at the city walls. When they saw Knight Sorrow coming, they immediately shouted the words, Hero. Ao Qingyun smiled when he saw the reaction of the crowd, and he said, This is Brother Yi Shang who saved my seaside city from danger. Everyone must remember today's kindness. Knight Sorrow. Knight Sorrow. Knight Sorrow. When the crowd was shouting, some of the people who had some contact with Knight Sorrow discovered that he was the Knight Sorrow who had mingled in the Sea and Sky Bazaar back then and caused a ruckus at Treasure Gathering Pavilion. Immediately, they felt more familiar and spread the word among the crowd. Hearing the crowd's discussion, some of the other cultivators looked at Knight Sorrow with even more different gazes. Some people even began to shout for Knight Sorrow to be the city lord. Ao Qingyun's face changed slightly when he heard that, but he suppressed it very well. Chapter 2695. City Lord? Upon hearing Ao Qingyun's words, Knight Sorrow glanced at him and said, I'm not interested. Oh. Ao Qingyun responded and didn't continue speaking. Yun Tianyi whispered, I'm afraid he has an ulterior motive. Seeing that Yun Tianyi was still muttering, Zhuang He immediately transmitted his voice, Tianyi. After all, we're working together. There's no need to make things so awkward. After today, we won't have any more disputes with the alliance leader. Let's not continue today. All right. I'll give Elder Zhuang face and won't say anything else. But I feel that Ao Qingyun must be up to something by inviting us to his residence for a meal. Yun Tianyi replied with a gloomy expression. If it's up to something, I think the city lord wants to show that he knows Brother Knight Sorrow. This can be considered as getting closer to him. Zhuang He continued to transmit his voice to Yuntiani. Yuntiani grunted and said, I hope so. At this time, Ao Qingyun had been chatting with Night Sorrow. In the eyes of outsiders, their relationship seemed to be very close. Walking back into High Bay City, where he had once stopped, Night Sorrow felt very emotional. However, he had no intention of revisiting the old place. Accompanied by Ao Qingyun and the rest, Night Sorrow, Yuntiani, and Zhuang He slowly walked into the city lord's residence. This city lord's residence was the one that Shangguanyun had used back then. When they arrived at the backyard of the city lord's residence, the food and wine were already prepared. Ao Qingyun hurriedly let Night Sorrow take a seat. City lord, you should sit in the main seat. If Night Sorrow sits anywhere, won't he be stealing the limelight? In the face of Ao Qingyun's invitation, Night Sorrow declined and casually found a seat to sit down. Yuntiani and Zhuang He sat beside him. Brother Night Sorrow, let's sit together now. There are some things that I have to explain. When you were fighting the dark creatures just now, I was thinking for the sake of the people of Seaside City. That's why I didn't activate the formation. After sitting at the main seat, Ao Qingyun hurriedly explained. Then he said, you also know that there aren't enough experts in the city. Facing the Divine King, it's very likely that all of them will be killed. Even if I have to bear the infamy of inaction, I cannot let the people of High Bay City take such a risk. Since it's all in the past, let's not talk about it anymore. Night Sorrow replied indifferently. As far as he was concerned, it didn't matter what the other party chose. However, he wouldn't associate himself with the other party. Good. Brother Yi is so straightforward. Ao Qingyun laughed boldly. He looked to his left and right and said, why don't you pay your respects to the great hero of our High Bay City? Yes. Understood. The two divine lords who had attacked Yuntiani and Zhuang He first each toasted Night Sorrow before raising their cups to apologize to Yuntiani and Zhuang He. After they made peace, Ao Qingyun said, Brother Night Sorrow, what kind of bow did you use in the battle? Why does it feel like it's even stronger than a king-grade divine artifact? I say, City Lord Ao, isn't it a little impolite to inquire about someone else's divine artifact like this? Yuntiani, who had already fallen silent, immediately glared at Ao Qingyun when he heard his question. Night Sorrow's divine artifact was a life-saving measure. How could he casually inquire about it? Ao Qingyun smiled awkwardly when he heard Yuntiani's words. He said, it's Qingyun who took it for granted. I'll punish myself with 3 cups of wine. After drinking 3 cups of wine, Ao Qingyun paused for a moment before continuing. Now that High Bay City's crisis has been resolved, I wonder where Brother Night Sorrow plans to go next. Are you still going back to Tianyun School? I heard that the Cloud Immortal Continent is currently embroiled in war. I wonder if it's true. Extraterrestrial demons have infiltrated the Cloud Immortal Continent. They are indeed embroiled in war. Night Sorrow had the power of merit. When Ao Qingyun said this, he could sense that something was amiss. He seemed to be trying to get information out of him. He responded and continued, I might not go to Tianyun School. Instead, I'll go to Tianyun School to cultivate in the area ruled by Tianyun. Oh. So that's how it is. Ao Qingyun's eyes flashed with surprise when he heard Night Sorrow's words. Then, he returned to normal. He asked the servant, why isn't Madam's best 3 lifetimes cake served today? City Lord, Madam should still be making it. After all, there's too little time. One of the maidservants immediately replied. Hurry her up, Ao Qingyun said with a gloomy expression. Hearing this, the maidservant immediately ran out of the courtyard where everyone was eating. Not long after, she returned to the courtyard with a tray of exquisite pastries. He reported, City Lord, the 3 lives 3 generations cake is ready. Good. Why aren't you serving it to the guests? Ao Qingyun glared at the maidservant and ordered. Yes. The maidservant, who was reprimanded, quickly ran to Night Sorrow and the others and gave each of them a piece of the cake. What kind of cake is this? Is it very special? Yin Tianyi asked nonchalantly as she looked at the 3 lifetimes cake placed in front of her. Since I value it so much, it's naturally not ordinary. Ao Qingyun smiled proudly and said, only my wife knows the recipe and method of making this 3 lifetimes cake. After eating one piece of this cake, it will immediately increase a cultivator's comprehension ability. It will also lead the consumer into an ethereal world. Enter an ethereal world? Zhuang He immediately asked curiously when he heard Ao Qingyun's words. Yes. After eating a piece of 3 lifetimes cake, one's mind will immediately enter a world called the Cloud Wilderness where one can experience 3 lifetimes. It's very mysterious. Ao Qingyun replied. She continued, don't underestimate this 3 lifetimes cake. It's extremely helpful for cultivation. It's beneficial for cultivation? When she heard that, Yin Tianyi said disdainfully, it's just a piece of cake. How can it have such a great effect? Tianyi, don't doubt it. It's just that mysterious. Ao Qingyun smiled and said, if you don't believe me, try it and see how effective it is. Fine, I'll try it. I'm not afraid that you'll poison it. Yin Tianyi said angrily as she grabbed a piece of 3 lifetimes cake and ate it. After eating the pastry, Yin Tianyi's eyes quickly became blurry. Before long, he fell into a deep slumber. Night Sorrow, who was sitting beside Yin Tianyi, called out to him softly but realized that there was no response. He asked worriedly, Tianyi should be fine, right? He's fine. He's definitely fine. And he'll definitely benefit from it. Ao Qingyun patted her chest and promised. After Ao Qingyun said that, Yin Tianyi actually shed tears. Not long after, she smiled again. About an hour later, she finally woke up from her unconscious state. Tianyi, how do you feel? Night Sorrow immediately asked when he saw that Yin Tianyi had woken up. I really experienced 3 lifetimes. After experiencing all that, I feel that my Tao heart has become more stable and my comprehension ability has increased significantly. Yin Tianyi, who was originally very suspicious of Ao Qingyun, said slowly. I knew that this cake is very mysterious. Chapter 2696. 3 Lives 3 Worlds Cake. Night Sorrow glanced at City Lord Ao Qingyun and nodded. All right. I'll give it a try. With that, he took a piece and popped it into his mouth. Great. Brother Night Sorrow, you're really a straightforward person. Enjoy the taste of 3 lives 3 worlds. If nothing goes wrong, you'll get a great harvest. A trace of a smile appeared on Ao Qingyun's face when he saw Yi Shang eat the 3 lifetimes cake. Why do I feel like this guy's smile is up to no good? Yin Tianyi sent a voice transmission to Zhuang He when he saw Ao Qingyun's expression. You must be thinking too much. The alliance leader shouldn't be that kind of person. Zhuang He had always had a good impression of Ao Qingyun. After all, he was the son of the old city lord, Ao Fang, and he had indeed saved many of Haibei City's geniuses. I hope so. Yin Tianyi sighed in his voice transmission. Tianyi, be careful. Ao Qingyun is hostile. At that moment, the Divine King's memories in Yin Tianyi's body suddenly reminded him. Yes. Patriarch. Yin Tianyi responded and sent a voice transmission to Night Sorrow. Brother Yi, Ao Qingyun might be plotting against us. However, Night Sorrow didn't respond. Clearly, he had already entered the 3 lives 3 worlds cake state. In fact, that was the case. After eating the 3 lives 3 worlds cake, Night Sorrow began his first life. He had experienced this before, but the feeling that the 3 lives 3 worlds cake gave him was too real. In this first life, Night Sorrow was a fisherman. He didn't have a single family and spent his days in a boat on the river, looking like he had nothing to do. In Night Sorrow's subconscious mind, he was an extremely hard-working person. Faced with a situation where he had nothing to do, he kept thinking of ways to change the situation. However, no matter how hard he tried, there seemed to be no change. Moreover, the situation became worse and worse. Gradually, the fish in the river all became demons. He went from fishing to being chased by fish. Moreover, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't get off the boat. They could only flee on the river. In the end, because the fish spirit was too powerful, he was swallowed into the stomach of a big fish, and his situation became even more sullen. It was simply too heart-wrenching. Would I, Night Sorrow, feel so aggrieved? Trapped in the fish's stomach, Night Sorrow's mood became extremely depressed. However, he was only an ordinary person here. He didn't have any divine essence force in his body, and he couldn't use the power of his divine soul. The torment in his heart was too great. Elder Zhuanghe, Ao Qingyun wants to deal with us. But Brother Yi has fallen into a deep sleep and can't wake up. Yin Tianyi, who called out to Night Sorrow but did not get a response, knew that he had entered the three lives cake state. She immediately sent a worried voice transmission to Zhuanghe. Tianyi, you're probably overthinking things. Zhuanghe glanced at Ao Qingyun and saw that he was chatting happily with the people around him. No, absolutely not. Elder Zhuanghe, can't you see that his aura has changed? Yin Tianyi said somewhat angrily. I don't feel anything strange. Zhuanghe smiled. His smile was a little strange. You're Ao Qingyun's man. No wonder you keep speaking up for him. Yin Tianyi immediately said angrily when she saw Zhuanghe's strange smile. All this time, she felt that Zhuanghe was on the same side as her. He knew what was right and what was right. She didn't expect Zhuanghe to completely change his attitude at this time. Ha ha ha. I, Zhuanghe, am the Alliance leader's man. You only realized it now. Aren't you a little too slow? Zhuanghe laughed and didn't send a voice transmission. Instead, he directly replied. Haha. Yin Tianyi, oh Yin Tianyi, you've been dancing with me. Now that Night Sorrow has fallen into a deep sleep, let's see where you can escape to now. At this time, Ao Qingyun's expression darkened as he slammed the table. Yin Tianyi's cultivation talent was very good, but she only barely broke through to the Godlord realm with the help of the Divine King's bloodline. She was no match for Ao Qingyun and his subordinates. Ao Qingyun, so you invited us for a meal because of your wild ambitions? Yin Tianyi said angrily. At this time, Night Sorrow was in a deep sleep. He felt a chill down his spine. Haha. A half-step godlord actually dares to wander around with a sovereign divine artifact. You're courting death. Ao Qingyun's eyes turned from their original black to red, looking extremely evil. You're not the original Alliance leader. What are you? Yin Tianyi asked in shock when he saw Ao Qingyun's change. Haha. Your Dark Alliance has always been jumping around in my territory. I was only busy trying to break through to a higher realm in the past, so I didn't explode. Otherwise, how could you have saved so many evildoers? After Ao Qingyun's voice turned cold, it made people tremble. At this time, it wasn't just him. Zhuanghe and the others' eyes also gradually turned from black to red. You're Wu Exan? Yin Tianyi asked with a face filled with fear when he heard the other party's words. Night Sorrow was in a deep sleep. If the other party was really Wu Exan, he had no chance of winning. Since you've guessed it's me, why don't you kneel and beg for mercy? Wu Exan, who had Ao Qingyun completely under his control, threatened with a cold smile. Bah! I, Yin Tianyi, would rather die in battle than kneel to a beast like you. Yin Tianyi said angrily. Wu Exan was clearly the main culprit behind the destruction of his family. How could he kneel when he hated him so much? Haha. Not kneeling? That's not up to you. Wu Exan, who was controlling Ao Qingyun with his divine spirit, released his god domain. Ao Qingyun, who was originally a godlord, actually released his king-level god domain. Under his pressure, Everyone present knelt. You're not here in your true form. Why are you pretending? Faced with the king-level god domain's pressure, Enchanting immediately activated his bloodline to resist it. It doesn't matter whether you're here or not. What matters is that you can't withstand my pressure. Knight Sorrow, who is trapped in the 3 lifetimes tribulation, can't withstand it either. The sovereign divine artifact is mine, Wu Xian. Wu Xian, who was controlling Ao Qin Yun, laughed proudly. I'm afraid you're celebrating too early. At this time, Jin Mia walked out of the clear sky pagoda with Shao Kong's help. He released his god domain to help Enchanting resist the other party's god domain. The middle-level divine king of the Golden Crow clan? You've hidden yourself well. When Knight Sorrow fought against the sky-piercing bone pagoda's owner, you didn't even show up. Wu Xian smiled coldly when he saw Jin Mia. There's still Long Tianqing. Why didn't you come out? Humph. Wu Xian, you despicable, shameless, and ungrateful villain. Long Tianqing, who walked out of the clear sky pagoda, immediately rebuked Wu Xian angrily when she thought of how he had swindled resources from the Jinyuan Divine Lord and turned around to harm High Base City. Huh, so what if I'm despicable and shameless? So what if I'm ungrateful? In the divine world, strength speaks for itself. Chapter 2697. Wu Xian, you think you can take on 2 divine king with this body of yours? I think you're overconfident. Long Tianqing's face turned cold when she saw that. After she appeared, she completely suppressed Wu Xian's divine territory. Ha, you're really ignorant and stupid. Why did I lead you here? Isn't it because I set up a king-level formation in the city? Wu Xian laughed and shook his head. Knight Sorrow's luck is indeed outstanding, but he doesn't have a brain. Now he's trapped in the 1,000 tribulation nightmare. Isn't it 3 lives, 3 worlds? Hearing Wu Xian's words, Enchanting immediately worried about Knight Sorrow. Ha ha ha. You're really naive. If I didn't give you the real 3 lives, 3 worlds cake, how would he fall for it? Wu Xian laughed. Yours is 3 lives, 3 worlds, and it's good for cultivation. He'll be trapped in the nightmare forever. You shouldn't be called Wu Xian. You should be called shameless. Hearing Wu Xian's words, Enchanting immediately rebuked him. At the same time, he felt sorry for Knight Sorrow. If it weren't for the good feedback he brought, Knight Sorrow probably wouldn't have eaten the poison cake. So what if I'm shameless? If you like it, I'll change my name to Shameless. At the same time, Wu Xian wantonly laughed and ordered, open the 3 Divine King Great Array. The 3 Divine King formations? Long Tianqing and Jin Mia's expressions turned grave when they heard this. They knew about the king-level defense formations of High Bay City. However, they had never heard of the other 3 king-level defense formations and couldn't figure out what they were. Huh, now you're scared? It's too late. After Wu Xian gave the order, the entire city lord's mansion changed its appearance. Long Tianqing, Jin Mia, Enchanting, and Knight Sorrow were all trapped in a huge stone prison. This stone prison was a king-level defense formation. It was like a hollowed egg with no exit at all. Let me try attacking. Being trapped inside the array formation, everyone naturally would not allow themselves to be captured without putting up a fight. Jin Mia immediately condensed divine essence energy and bombarded the stone prison's walls. However, his attack was like hitting cotton. There was no response at all, not even the slightest sound. How could this be? Although Jin Mia was the divine king, he had never seen such a strange spell formation before. His expression became even more solemn. This looks like the heaven-shrouding sun formation. It's said that only the creator of the world can break it. Long Tianqing, who also had an unsightly expression, was clearly more knowledgeable than Jin Mia. She voiced her opinion. Hearing this, Wu Xian smiled and replied, Long Tianqing, as expected of a 3rd-generation elite of the dragons, you have good insight. But so what if you know? You'll never be able to break this formation. Right now, my true body is already on the way. When my men and I arrive, all of you will die. Wu Xian, there's a saying that goes, those who commit too much injustice will bring about their own destruction. You'll die miserably in the future. Recalling Wu Xian's actions, Yuntianyi gnashed his teeth in hatred. However, he did not have the ability to fight back, so he could only suppress the anger in his heart. Even if I die, it will be a long time in the future. In less than 3 days, my true body will arrive. At that time, all of you will suffer a fate worse than death. Wu Xian ridiculed everyone and said proudly, when I obtain the Dominator divine weapon and experience the Dominator law within, my strength will definitely increase by leaps and bounds. It's even possible for me to break through to the Dominator rank sooner. This Yi Shang is really a boy who gives out treasures. He's a psychopath. We don't need to pay attention to him. Let's see how Night Sorrow is doing. Yuntianyi disdainfully said to Wu Xian and turned to look at Night Sorrow. At this moment, Night Sorrow was placed on a stone bed by Long Tianqing. He looked extremely frightened as he slept, his expression somewhat malevolent. Brother Yi, who has fallen into a deep sleep, is probably suffering from an attack on his spirit. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. Yuntianyi judged. This was the judgment made by the Divine King in his body. Otherwise, with his eyesight, he would not be able to see anything. Yes. Night Sorrow is suffering from an attack on his spirit. Wu Xian's methods are not simple. Long Tianqing said worriedly when she saw Night Sorrow's expression. Normally, in order to survive such an attack, one's spirit must be extremely powerful. I hope Lord Night Sorrow can survive. Jin Nie's words were also filled with worry. Along the way, he had seen Night Sorrow's performance. As the Divine King, he was full of admiration. According to my understanding of Brother Yi, he's not someone who is easily tricked. Why is it like this today? Yuntianyi, who continued to observe Night Sorrow, said in puzzlement. Maybe it's because he defeated the dark evil creature and relaxed, so he wasn't vigilant. Jin Nie sighed. Sigh. Brother Yi is like this now. The alliance leader and the elders should all be under Wu Xian's control. Why did things develop like this? Thinking of the alliance leader, Ao Qingyun, and elder Zhuang He, Yuntianyi felt very upset. At this moment, he thought of the incident on the city wall and thought to himself that he should have thought of the alliance leader's abnormality. Ao Qingyun had a righteous personality. It was impossible for him to choose to bide his time under the circumstances. It will be fine. Everything will be fine. Brother Night Sorrow is the person who created the world. As long as he wakes up, we can leave this place. At this moment, Xian Jizi walked out of the clear sky pagoda and said, Yes. Brother Yi seems to have ascended from the lower realm. He's the same as Sovereign Tianai, a person who created the world. Hearing Xian Jizi's words, Yuntianyi's face immediately became excited. Obviously, if Night Sorrow wasn't the person who created the world, they wouldn't have the ability to break the formation at all. What they needed now was for Night Sorrow to wake up. Night Sorrow is the person who created the world? Wu Xian, who was standing outside the formation and watching the situation inside, immediately became serious when he heard Xian Jizi's words. But then he calmed down and said, So what if he is? If he doesn't wake up, it's useless no matter how powerful he is. At the same time, his main body sped up and rushed toward Haibei City. Because the place where Wu Xian originally cultivated was not the Wu Xian divine realm and was rather far from Haibei City, it would take a few days. In these few days, Long Tianqing and Yuntianyi took care of Night Sorrow in every way possible, but he still didn't wake up, which made everyone a little anxious. After all, Night Sorrow was equivalent to carrying the lives of everyone present on his shoulders. If he didn't wake up, not only would Long Tianqing, Jin Nie, and Yuntianyi suffer misfortune. Night Moon Dynasty, the Horn Clan, Shao Tianxuan's family, as well as Night Sorrow's group of friends, they would all become fish on the chopping board. Husband, hurry and wake up from your nightmare. Chapter 2698. Chiyu, don't call hubby. His current situation is very dangerous. Jing Yun, who also walked out of the vast heaven pagoda, reminded. She was clear that people who fell into a nightmare were most afraid of external disturbances. Okay. I won't say any more. Sikong Chiyu responded. Seeing Night Sorrow's expression was very hideous, and his head was covered in sweat. Taking out a handkerchief, he gently wiped him. The others stood by the side, sighing repeatedly. Haha. Night Sorrow's strength isn't much, but his luck is indeed pretty good. Not only does he have a sovereign rank divine artifact, but his wives and concubines are also as beautiful as flowers. All of you listen well. Very soon, you will all become my slaves. Wu Xin, who used his divine soul to suppress Ao Qingyun, provoked when he saw Night Sorrow's beautiful wives walk out of the vast heaven pagoda. Stop dreaming. When hubby wakes up, you will die without a burial ground. Hearing Wu Xin's provocation, Lin Piaomiao immediately responded. Observing Lin Piaomiao, Wu Xin praised, remarkable, remarkable. Your bloodline talent is simply heaven-defying. I must have you and sleep with you. With just the likes of you, you're not worthy at all. Lin Piaomiao said disdainfully. Wu Xin said energetically, whether I'm worthy or not, you have to try before you know. Beauty, this seat will arrive very soon. You better get ready. Get lost. I don't talk to dead people. Lin Piaomiao scolded and ignored Wu Xin. Personality. I like it. After Wu Xin said this coldly, a smile appeared on his face. He sensed that his main body was already not far away. Wu Xin's main body seems to be here. Night Sorrow hasn't woken up yet. What should we do? Wu Xin was silent. Looking at Long Tianqing, who was Night Sorrow, he said. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Jean Nie said. Although he did not have much contact, he felt that Night Sorrow would not be so easily dealt with. That's all we can do. Long Tianqing nodded and did not say anything else. Although her array formation attainments were very high, this array formation could not be broken by those who did not split heaven and earth apart. It was not something that could be broken. Everyone quietly waited for Wu Xian, but their hearts were a bit uneasy. I have arrived. Why aren't you all kneeling down and worshipping me? The people in the array waited for a long time before Wu Xian's cold voice suddenly sounded. He's here. Everyone, including Long Tianqing and Jean Nie, felt immense pressure when they heard Wu Xian's voice. Clearly, Wu Xin's strength was above Long Tianqing's and Jean Nie's. Those who kneel and await their punishment, don't die. Those who resist will have their souls destroyed. After Wu Xian said this, no one responded. His cold voice sounded again. You'd better keep those words to yourself. We're all divine king. What do you have to show off? Jean Nie immediately responded to Wu Xian's words. He was one of the stronger ones on their side, so he naturally stood out at the crucial moment. You're no match for me at all. After sizing up Jean Nie for a moment, Wu Xin proudly said, a piece of trash like you is no different from a divine king in front of me. There's no difference. Let me out and we'll fight. Jean Nie roared. Want to come out and fight? You'd better enjoy the feast that I've prepared. Wu Xian smiled maliciously and ordered, throw all the things that I brought into the array. Yes. After Wu Xian gave the order, several invincible divine lords transported several bottles into the array one after another. After that, they exploded in the array and gradually formed a red and green poisonous fog. Very poisonous. Everyone, bring Night Sorrow and hide in the vast heaven pagoda. Although Long Tianqing did not recognize this poisonous fog, she sensed it with her divine soul power and determined that it was not simple. Haha. This is called myriad poison miasma. I obtained it in another world. Even a divine king or a king-grade divine artifact can't hold on for long. Prepare to die. Seeing Long Tianqing let everyone hide in the vast heaven pagoda, Wu Xian immediately sneered. What? What should we do? Although she looked down on Wu Xian, Yuntianyi felt that what he said should not be false. She immediately did not know how to face it. I, the divine king, have never faced this kind of poisonous fog before either. Don't know how to resist. Jean Mia said with some headache. Long Tianqing moved and said, I'll try to set up an array within an array to isolate the poisonous fog as much as possible. It's no use. The array that you set up can't block the myriad poison miasma at all. Prepare to welcome death. Wu Xian outside sneered repeatedly. Seeing that everyone did not have any temper, he continued, that girl that I took a fancy to just now, have you considered it now? Get lost. I won't bother with a beast like you. Lin Piaomiao replied without any trace of politeness. What should we do? Looking at Lin Piaomiao, Sikong Chuyu's expression was very solemn. What to do? Of course, break the turtle shell, then go out and behead that beast Wu Xian. Right at this time, Night Sorrow's voice suddenly sounded out in the array. Husband. You're awake? Hearing Night Sorrow's voice, Sikong Chuyu's eyes immediately lit up. In reality, not just her, the others in the array formation also all heaved a sigh in relief. Clearly, he already became everyone's backbone. Not considered awake. One of the divine souls is currently transcending his so-called calamity. Night Sorrow opened his mouth to explain. Turns out, what he was transcending was a newly generated divine sea. It did not have much effect on him. From the beginning until now, he had always been awake. After slowly standing up, Night Sorrow stared outside the array formation and said, Wu Xian, you're finally here. I've already waited for you for a long time. You actually woke up. Seeing Night Sorrow stand up, Wu Xian was somewhat in disbelief at first. But following that, he said, so what if I woke up? It's just suffering the torment of the myriad poison miasma together. You're wrong. I didn't wake up, but I've been waiting for you to arrive all along. Night Sorrow held the Samsara heavenly halberd in his hand and replied to Wu Xian, preaching to everyone, all enter the vast heaven pagoda. With me around, Wu Xian can't stir up any waves. Good. Brother Yi. With your words, we can set our minds at ease. When Yuntianyi heard Night Sorrow's words, she immediately entered inside the vast heaven pagoda with a smile. This. All right then. Long Tianqing and Jean Mia hesitated for a moment and also followed into the spatial artifact. Although they were the divine king, at present, they definitely could not help much. Looking at Night Sorrow, Wu Xian revealed a cold smile and said, didn't expect that you have two divine seas. Good, very good. Just nice can let this seat study it. Want to study my divine seas, you have to live on. Night Sorrow replied and used the Samsara heavenly halberd to bombard the wall above his head. Chapter 2699. Accept the baptism of the infinite poison miasma? We don't have such unique hobbies. The Samsara halberd hit the wall but did not have any effect. However, Night Sorrow did not panic. He thought for a while and put away the Samsara halberd. After activating the Tianxian's secret skill to increase his strength, he blasted the hand of splitting heaven and earth toward the wall. With a boom, the enclosed space formed by the sky-shrouding formation shattered like an eggshell. You're the one who split heaven and earth? Seeing Night Sorrow break the sky-shrouding formation in an instant, Wu Xian, who originally thought that victory was in his grasp, changed his expression immediately. He did not expect Night Sorrow to wake up so quickly, nor did he expect Night Sorrow to break the sky-shrouding formation in one move. What does it have to do with you whether I split heaven and earth or not? Wu Xian, as the saying goes, one who is unjust is doomed to destruction. I have been looking forward to challenging you for a long time. Today, I will seek justice for Brother Mo Qianqian, Sir God Jinyuan, and the others. Night Sorrow, who rushed out of the sky-shrouding formation with the clear sky pagoda and left the infinite poison miasma, floated in the air and stared at Wu Exine. At the same time, the two Divine King, Long Tianqing and Jin Nia, walked out of the clear sky pagoda one after another. On the other side, Wu Exine had a strange smile on his face. Behind him stood about 20 Sir Gods. Among these Sir Gods, 3 were invincible Sir Gods and the rest were ordinary Sir Gods. In comparison, their lineup was not as good as Night Sorrow's. However, Wu Exine smiled strangely and said, "Today, none of you will be able to leave. So what if you break the sky-shrouding formation? There are surprises waiting for you." After Wu Exine finished speaking, the entire governor's mansion suddenly changed its appearance and turned into the 9 Serenities hell. Countless ferocious ghosts with disheveled hair pounced on Night Sorrow and the others from all directions. What kind of means is this? Seeing that these ferocious ghosts were basically Sir Gods, Jin Nia, who spat out a mouthful of flames, asked in confusion. It seems to be the 9 Serenities ferocious ghost formation. Wu Exine once said that there are 3 great arrays in the city. This should be the second one. Everyone, be careful. The one who answered Jin Nia was the knowledgeable Long Tianqing. After she finished speaking, she took out a kasaya that emitted a red glow from her spatial artifact. After she put it on, she silently chanted the name of Buddha. After Long Tianqing chanted the Buddhist mantra, countless golden swastikas appeared on her kasaya and shot towards the attacking phantoms. These swastikas were extremely large in number, like golden flowers scattered by a heavenly maiden. After shooting out, the first few malicious ghosts were quickly dealt with. However, as soon as the evil ghosts at the front were destroyed, the Divine Lord-level evil ghosts at the back immediately swarmed out. After Long Tianqing's kasaya resisted for a while, the golden light on it gradually dimmed. "I'm afraid this won't work. I won't be able to hold on for much longer. We still need to completely break the formation." Sensing that something was amiss, Long Tianqing said solemnly. In fact, she was originally one of the super geniuses of the dragons, but she had been too occupied with the matter of the Divine Lord Jinyuan over the years and had not put all her energy into cultivation. Although she was the Divine King, her strength was relatively weak. Haha. The 9 Nether Malicious Ghost Formation has an endless number of malicious ghosts. Although they are basically all at the Divine Lord level, they have the advantage in numbers. Just wait to be slowly exhausted to death. Seeing Long Tianqing's performance, Wu Xin, who had already left the formation, laughed complacently. "Wu Xin, I'm a shameless villain. I, Mo Yuqian, must have been blind to have spent so much resources to nurture you back then." Wu Xin's unbridled manner angered Mo Yuqian, who was in the clear sky pagoda, and he came out to curse loudly. "Ha ha ha. Mo Yuqian, oh Mo Yuqian. You old fart, you can only blame yourself for being blind if you believe me." After Mo Yuqian walked out of the clear sky pagoda, Wu Xin immediately ridiculed him. Then, he said disdainfully, "If you weren't blind, how could you have become like this? Wu Xin, a person like you will definitely end up in an incomparably miserable state." Mo Yuqian was furious, but he was not very good at scolding people. "With that mouth of yours, it's better if you don't talk nonsense with me. If you have time, go deal with a few more malicious ghosts. Could it be that you only know how to fight with your mouth?" Wu Xin did not give up. Mo Yuqian was so angry that the puppet god trembled, and he did not say anything for a while. At this time, Night Sorrow walked to Mo Yuqian's side and comforted him. "Old brother, don't waste your breath on a person who is about to die. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. In the future, his soul will be destroyed, and you will become immortal. Old brother Night Sorrow is right. Old brother is too stubborn." Mo Yuqian, who was still angry, calmed down a little. Looking at Wu Xin, Night Sorrow, he suddenly said, "Thank you for preparing so much power of virtue for me. If the malicious ghosts are really as endless as you say, then I'm afraid that I will become the divine king here. I'm afraid your brain is damaged, right? Don't think that just because you came from the lower realm, you are invincible in the god realm. Hearing Night Sorrow's words, Wuxin's mouth revealed a disdainful smile. You don't believe me? Then open your dog eyes wide. Night Sorrow interrupted Long Tianqing and Jin Mia, who were bitterly resisting the endless malicious ghosts. He took out the heavenly samsara halberd and shot out the inferno demon that contained the power of virtue at the malicious ghosts. The sky was filled with golden power of virtue, and the flames immediately covered the entire formation. The malicious ghosts were not afraid of being burned by the flames, but the power of virtue was different. Burned by the power of virtue, most of the malicious ghosts were instantly converted into power of virtue and flew toward Night Sorrow. Absorbing the power of virtue in front of Wuxin, Night Sorrow smiled and said, "These ghosts, come as many as you can." In fact, Night Sorrow hadn't been idle when the malicious ghosts had first appeared. He'd killed one of them and discovered that he could convert it into merit power. He'd immediately relaxed and felt that the array formation before him wasn't much at all. Bastard. Using the power of virtue to attack and then killing the malicious ghosts to absorb the power of virtue. The 9 Serenities malicious ghost formation does not work on him. Wuxin, who was standing outside the formation, saw Night Sorrow's performance and was so angry that his body trembled. He snorted and ordered, "We can't just watch his strength grow infinitely. Close the 9 Serenities malicious ghost formation and activate the confinement space formation. Trap them all inside." "Yes. Lord Divine King." After Wuxin gave the order, the 3 invincible Sur gods behind him immediately obeyed and activated the confinement space formation that had been set up long ago. The 9 Serenities malicious ghost formation was closed and the confinement space formation was activated. The scene before Night Sorrow and the others immediately changed. Chapter 2700. What array formation is this again? Seeing the fierce ghosts all disappear and the entire space become silent, deathly silent, Night Sorrow opened his mouth to ask. Long Tianqing glanced at Night Sorrow, brows furrowed slightly, and said, "The array formation in front of us, I can't make out its name either. But it's definitely not simple. As the finale array formation, it's definitely not simple." Night Sorrow replied, then opened up the sea serpent's eye and carefully observed the array formation in front of them. He was clear that among everyone present, apart from himself and Long Tianqing, the others should not have studied king rank array formations. Carefully observing for a while, Night Sorrow's expression suddenly became solemn and he said, "Not good. This area that we're in is shrinking non-stop. If my guess is right, it will crush everything in the array formation in the end." Let me see. Jin Mia, who originally did not have any thoughts, immediately observed seriously when he heard Night Sorrow's words. After looking for a while, he said with a deep look, "Indeed so. Although the space in front of us looks very big, enough to accommodate millions of people. Looking at the current speed, we won't need a year and will completely have no space to live. Although with their strength, as long as there was a bit of space, they could survive, this array formation was clearly able to completely compress space. Let's split up and take action, see if we can find a way to crack the array formation." Roughly figuring out this array formation's knack, Long Tianqing looked at Night Sorrow and Jin Mia. At the current rate of shrinking, they would completely lose the space to live after a year. But nobody could be sure whether the shrinking speed of space would have a change or not. Hence, the time left for them was not much. "Okay. Let me take a look, I can see through the loopholes of this array formation." Night Sorrow responded and transmitted his voice to everyone in the vast heaven pagoda. "The situation right now is somewhat dangerous. But everyone, don't worry, I'll think of a way to resolve it." Just as he was about to have his own territory in the divine realm and thoroughly settle down, such a crisis appeared in front of him again. He felt very sorry for his family. "Husband, we believe in you. Don't overthink it. Sekom Chuyu immediately responded gently. She knew what Night Sorrow was thinking. Then, Yang Lei said, 13, don't worry. If you can't find a way, take out your ruler artifact and destroy the space in front of you. You don't say, this method might really work. Hearing Yang Lei's words, Night Sorrow smiled and nodded. If he couldn't find a way, breaking the formation by force was indeed the only choice. Don't worry about us, everyone believes in you. Seeing that Night Sorrow was still thinking about his family in such a dangerous situation, Jing Yun, who had just blended in with him, responded with a smile. Originally, she had lost her entire family and felt very lonely. Now that she had completely integrated into the Night Moon family and found a sense of belonging, she felt that facing difficulties with everyone was much better than living alone. Without any suspense, other than the two of them, the other members of the Yi family all spoke up. They did not mind the difficulties in front of them. Furthermore, they had unlimited trust in Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow smiled when he saw everyone in his family act this way. Then, he looked for a way to break the formation with Long Tianqing and Jin Mia. After using the sea serpent's eye to observe the formation thoroughly, Night Sorrow did not find any clues. Thus, he looked at Long Tianqing and asked, Senior Tianqing, did you find anything? I did find something, but it's not good news. Long Tianqing looked at Night Sorrow and sighed. I found that this formation should be broken from the outside. This is also the ingenuity of this formation. That's right. If the person who created this formation had left a way to break it, this formation would not have qualified to be a king-level formation. Furthermore, it was used as the final formation by Wuxin. Jin Mia nodded with a deep gaze. At this moment, he was rather depressed. After leaving the ancient Golden Crow realm, he realized that he had not been able to protect Night Sorrow at all. Fortunately, their relationship had become much closer, and he had completed the task that Kim Hong had given him. It seems that Ninth Senior Sister's prophecy has come true. We really can break the formation. Unable to find a way, Night Sorrow voiced his opinion. If there's no other way, we can only use brute force. Long Tianqing agreed. Then, she continued, however, a king-level formation is known for its suppression. It will definitely be very difficult to break it. With our strength, we might not be able to do it. Whether it's feasible or not, we have to try. It's better than waiting for death. Let me try first. Jin Mia was an impatient person. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out his copper cauldron and released flames that blasted at the wall in front of him. Ha ha ha. You guys really want to die too slowly. You still want to add fuel to the fire. Seeing Jin Mia attack the wall with flames, Wuxin, who was drinking tea and watching from outside, put down his teacup and laughed wantonly. As soon as he finished speaking, the wall, which hadn't been damaged by Jin Mia's attack, suddenly shrank by a few dozen meters. After the wall shrank, the originally spacious space suddenly became extremely oppressive, making it difficult for everyone to breathe. So attacking the formation's wall will cause a backlash. I was too impatient. I've let everyone down. Jin Mia, who had just attacked the wall, saw the wall shrink, and his expression changed greatly as he apologized. It's okay. If you didn't attack, we would have. It's all the same. Night Sorrow hurriedly comforted him. Although the wall shrank by a few dozen meters and everyone was in a bad mood, this wasn't Jin Mia's fault. No. It's my fault. Jin Mia sighed and said, I was too impatient and didn't think about the consequences. At that time, Night Sorrow should have used his Dominator-level divine artifact and used the strongest attack we could release. That way, even if the wall shrank, it would prove that it was impossible to break the formation with brute force. It wouldn't be like this. That's the logic, but it's already happened. There's no use in regretting it. Right now, we need to think of the most feasible solution. Being trapped in this confined space made him feel very anxious. However, Night Sorrow still maintained his calm at this moment and prepared to discuss the most feasible solution with everyone. I think Jean Mia is right. Our only hope should be the Dominator-level divine artifact in your hands. Long Tianqing looked at Night Sorrow and then looked at the wall that was slowly shrinking. She said, however, our safest choice is to let you cultivate for a period of time and strive to become a monarch god. I feel that you won't be able to open a way out with just the strength of a high god. Senior Tianqing's words are reasonable. However, there's another way. That is for you or Jean Mia to use Tianyun Bao and see if you can unleash an even stronger attack. Chapter 2701. According to Night Sorrow's judgment, Long Tianqing and Jean Mia, as the Divine King, were definitely stronger than him. If they could use the Tianyun Bao, they might be able to achieve unexpected results. This won't do. I can't accept the sovereign grade artifact. Jean Mia was very moved by Night Sorrow's words. He didn't think that Night Sorrow would trust him so much. However, he immediately refused. He was too embarrassed to accept it. Long Tianqing was the same. She said seriously, Night Sorrow, the sovereign grade artifact is very precious. You can't give it to anyone else at any time. Because that might be handing over your life. Aren't we handing our lives to each other right now? Right now, we're all bound together for good or ill. Yi Shang smiled and continued, at a time like this, no matter what, we can't just stand by and wait for death. If there's a way, we have to try it. You two don't have to be so polite. Jean Mia felt his body tremble. He said, Brother Night Sorrow, I, Jean Mia, will recognize you as a friend from now on. I'll treat you no differently than any other Golden Crow race member. A friend in need is a friend indeed. I, Night Sorrow, also recognize Brother Jean Mia as a good friend. Yi Shan smiled as he extended his fist and bumped it with Jean Mia's. Outside the formation, Wu Xin sneered when he saw Night Sorrow and Jean Mia. Ha ha ha. You two are really interesting. How about this, you two become sworn brothers of different surnames. This way, you don't have to ask to be born in the same year, month, and day, but you can ask to die in the same year, month, and day. No, this kind of person doesn't understand feelings. I, Jean Mia, am willing to fight together with a heroic person like Brother Night Sorrow even if I die in battle. Being disdained by Wu Xin, a trace of anger appeared between Jean Mia's brows. He said coldly, Brother Night Sorrow. Give me the bow. Okay. Take the bow. Night Sorrow didn't hesitate and handed the Tianyun Bao over. Long Tianqing wanted to stop him, but she swallowed her words. She felt that there was no need to suspect that Jean Mia was up to no good under such circumstances. Tianyun Bao. Good bow. Who would have thought that I, Jean Mia, would one day have the chance to use a sovereign artifact? Holding the Tianyun Bao in his hand, Jean Mia felt a sense of heroism rise in his chest. He immediately prepared to shoot at the wall. He had witnessed the scene of Night Sorrow shooting the sun with his bow, so he knew that Tianyun Bao could use it even without an arrow. At this moment, Night Sorrow handed over a heaven cloud arrow and said, Since you've used a sovereign grade god artifact, use your strongest attack. After Jean Mia received the sky cloud arrow, Night Sorrow sent a telepathic message to Jean Mia, infuse Tianyun Bao with your blood. You'll be able to activate it better. Blood infusion? You won't let it recognize you as its master, right? Jean Mia, who was holding the Tianyun Bao, looked at Night Sorrow and asked. That won't happen. Infusing your blood will only make Tianyun Bao stronger. It's not enough to make it recognize you as its master. I think that it won't recognize you as its master unless you have the strength of a sovereign grade god artifact. Night Sorrow told Jean Mia about infusing Tianyun Bao with his blood and told him that it wasn't a problem that he was worried about. All right. I understand. After hearing Night Sorrow's words, Jin Nia immediately cut his wrist and infused Tianyun Bao with his blood. In the process of absorbing the blood, the heaven cloud bao gradually grew flesh and blood from the shape of a bone bao. Seeing flesh and blood appear on Tianyun Bao's body, Jin Nia immediately became excited and said, "The effect is very obvious." "It's not that obvious. When I infused my blood, the aura of the flesh and blood was stronger than it is now." Night Sorrow discovered that after Jin Nia infused his blood, Tianyun Bao's flesh and blood had the aura of a tiger and leopard. It didn't have dragon blood or dragon scales. After explaining, he said, "Brother Jin Nia, stop. I'll infuse my blood while you draw the bao." "All right. Brother Night Sorrow's talent is definitely better than mine. You do it." Every sovereign grade god artifact was very mysterious. Jin Nia had heard of them before. He immediately stopped and gave the opportunity to Night Sorrow. After Night Sorrow cut his finger, he immediately infused Tianyun Bao with his blood. After Night Sorrow's blood infused Tianyun Bao's flesh and blood, it immediately became even stronger. Finally, a layer of dragon reverse scales grew on Tianyun Bao's surface that was even stronger than normal dragon scales. "The effect is very good. Brother Jin Nia, you can try attacking the wall." Seeing Tianyun Bao's changes, Night Sorrow confirmed with satisfaction. "Good. Watch me draw the bao and shoot." Upon hearing Night Sorrow's words, Jin Nia immediately swallowed a pill that could temporarily increase his strength. He also used a secret technique to raise his condition to its peak. Then, he knocked the heaven cloud arrow on Tianyun Bao and pulled the bowstring. "Lord Divine King, the other party has a sovereign grade god artifact. The array won't be pierced through, right?" After Jin Nia used the sovereign grade god artifact to shoot the arrow, an invincible divine lord behind Wuxin immediately asked worriedly. "It shouldn't be." Wuxin replied uncertainly. Then, he confidently said, "But even if they can charge out of the array, it doesn't matter. This divine king has even more terrifying trump cards waiting for them." "Yes. Lord Divine King, your plans are flawless. We are in awe." One of the divine lords immediately flattered. "I can't say that my plans are flawless, but there shouldn't be any suspense when dealing with them. After all, the divine world doesn't just rely on wits. It also relies on true strength." Wuxin smiled. Although Night Sorrow had a sovereign grade god artifact and 2 divine kings, he didn't care at all. Clearly, he still had a trump card. While Wuxin and the others were talking, Jin Nia had already done his best to draw the bao and shot the heaven cloud arrow. The instant the heaven cloud arrow shot out, a violent explosion sounded in the void. As expected of a sovereign grade god artifact. Its power is indeed shocking. Long Tianqing, who watched the heaven cloud arrow shoot into the wall, couldn't help but praise it. She secretly thought that if this kind of attack couldn't break through, then they probably wouldn't have a chance to break out of the array. Pfft! Jin Nia, who was originally very excited, suddenly suffered a strong backlash and fell to the ground. However, his eyes were fixed on the heaven cloud arrow that was shot out. In fact, he wasn't the only one. Night Sorrow and everyone in the Clear Sky Pagoda all locked their gazes on the Tianyun Bao that flew out. Everyone was hoping for a good outcome. After all, if nothing unexpected happened, this was their only chance. Boom! At this moment, under everyone's expectant gazes, the heaven cloud arrow suddenly bombarded the wall of the array. In the blink of an eye, the area where the wall had been struck exploded, and an endless amount of light blossomed from it. This light was even more intense than the golden crow illuminating the world. It made it impossible for people to see the situation clearly. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.